Hello? Is there anyone there? How you doing? Welcome to the Monday Grind on a Tuesday. Special Monday Grind on a Tuesday. Not just because it's on a Tuesday, but because I've decided to invite other people on here. Because why not? Really, I want to have some conversations about Rookeis. The podcast has always been the forum for that, but separated, they tend to be very different kinds of shows, right? They're hours long. They're hard to edit, and I'm not a fan of hard work. So, yeah, I've got Zac Reed from the Dynasty Dummies backstage getting dressed. Sexy. And he's going to come on and talk to us some rookies in the 2021 class. How are you all doing? Good? I can't see you. Where my comments? So I'm in a shambles. I had to put on my open bar show. If you're looking for some entertainment, by the way, the open bar is live on YouTube probably right now. Highly recommend that channel. Highly recommend everyone on it, especially the hosts, J. Mike Check and Gabe Gearing, who's also a TikTok star. If you don't know, you should probably check him out. And that's every Tuesday. This is random. No, I'm specifically used Monday because I want to watch the open bar on Tuesday, but I had to work yesterday. So we're here. We're out here on a Tuesday. We apologize to the open bar. Definitely check them out and can watch our replay. If you are going to choose one or the other to watch live, I highly recommend them. But we appreciate you being here if you're making that decision as well. Be sure I'm going to be watching the open bar afterwards. If I still have any energy left, Zac has a way of running me ragged, so we'll see what he does. But yeah, any comments, questions, or players that you want to specifically talk about, let us know. My conversation style, as you probably know, don't switch. There we go. Is all over the place. I've got Discord open for any Patreons who want to jump in the Discord and ask a question there. But really, I'm going to pay attention to everyone as much as I can. Means like a pretty set on our rank, so it should be a fun conversation. Let's get Zac in here, I guess. Yeah, let's go.
Hey Zac. Peter, how are you?
I am good. Yourself?
Oh, fantastic.
Are you dressed? Are you decent now?
Great. Yeah, I threw on my Bull Rush t-shirt. I thought that you had the open bar on. I might as well go Bull Rush. We'll represent pods that are way better than ours and call it good.
That's fair. I actually just watched a video. I'm going to have to look at the channel now because he's just started his YouTube channel. He's in our community, but he's doing videos on how to do lighting and videos. And what I learned in that 10 minutes was I do everything wrong. That's why I look like this is all terrible, apparently. It's just I click go, and this is where we're at. But I did learn a lot. I got to look up that channel, guys, because you really got to follow it. He's a cool guy offering information if you want to start doing this kind of stuff. I wish I had found his channel before I started, put it that way. But yeah, before we got on screen, because no matter how I schedule it, we always end up having an interesting conversation before we actually start having our conversation, whether it's on the podcast or here. I always click to go live or record early enough. Hey, Nick Martinez, man, I'm having a battle back and forth with this in the open bar. This is tough. I love you both. Again, Nick, I strongly advocate for watching the open bar, man. It's fine. I'm a big fan of Zac. Watch our replay. That's cool. I'm in their time slot, if there is such a thing anymore, purely because of my work schedule. Normally, this would be on a Monday. I apologize for that. But yeah, don't feel bad. I'm not going to feel bad if you watch the open bar. I'm a big fan. I'm going to watch it as soon as I can as well. Hey, AKA Ship. Hey, Nick Martinez again. Appreciate you and love you. But yeah, we were talking about, how basically we're the only ones with good processes, and all these kids jumping in need to get better process. They need to get good, kid, because they're not it. No, but we were talking about how we developed our way, started to develop, because it's something hopefully that you continually work on, continually get better. Because the one thing I know is how many things I've got wrong. And the one thing I spend most of my time doing is staring like a scared little bunny rabbit, or every player I've got wrong, whether they were better or worse than I thought they were going to be, just hoping to find some extra information. I rarely find anything, but I do get a better understanding of at least what they were in college, and I hope it at least humbles me. I'm waiting for anything to humble me. Frankly, I'm so good. But when I'm looking at a new class, and the 2021 class is an interesting one. As far as I can tell, just don't draft any of the running backs. They all suck, especially Najee Harris, obviously. And just draft like Mac Jones. I guess that's where I'm at. But what kind of class do you think this is? Strong one? It feels like a letdown year, right? 2020 was so good, you expect the next one to be terrible, right? But there's a lot of good profiles, man.
It's what I've been saying now since I started in on the tape is, everybody was saying that this was like part 2 of 2020. Like, you had The Godfather, you got kind of warmed up, and then you had The Godfather 2, and you're like, this is great. Coming into this, looking at what I've got for prospects, I don't love it as much. I think that there are some strong receivers. There are a couple running backs that I will be fine, but it's not like 2020 was. You made fun of me last year when I came on and said 2020 was fantastic. And
it's a good bet, man. It's a good bet to hide damn rookies. It's just it is.
I mean, but this year I don't have. Well, I sent you or tweeted at you that list because I got thinking about, you had a show, I don't know, it was 2 or 3 shows ago, where you talked about, your hits and misses and where guys ranked within, from 2014 to now. And so I went back and took a look at my film notes and did the same thing. And there is not a player in this class that was in the top 5 or 6 for running back. So there's none of that. There's not an elite runner. It's not the Saquon Barkley. It's not Christian McCaffrey. It's not Dalvin Cook. It's not the class that everybody had kind of built us up for.
I'm responding to someone here. Apparently someone DM'd me and I didn't respond, which is a big surprise to me because normally I can't not stop responding to people. So I'm just letting them know I'll get back to them. Yeah, I was going to say, obviously I'm always right. That's basically what you were saying, right? No,
exactly.
No, you do try and improve, but unfortunately, the player that's on my mind, and I've literally got a 40-minute YouTube video ready to go. I think it's too big for me to upload, about Terrence Marshall this year. Just desperately trying to explain that when I say he's underproductive, I mean going through it 6-7 ways. I don't know, but I do know I'm wrong a lot. Anyone who's being any kind of honest knows they get stuff wrong a lot. They get shit wrong a lot. Okay, they just do. And so if he's good, I don't want to not draft him, and I don't want to just rely on draft capital. I want to know before it turns out, right? So it is hard, but there's no way you can do this and actually try to establish a process without coming to some realization that sometimes the things you have to use to make decisions are going to fail you, and just looking for the exceptions before they happen can drive you mad. But that's what we do. That's the thing. Whatever this is. Hey, Bob. This could be a highlight of 2021 to have Peter and Zac together. Yeah, pretty much. This is my 2021 altogether. Gamewell, I do want to talk about Gamewell. Do you want to start with a position or a particular player you want to? Because me, I'm going to rant and rave about every player basically. So if you've got one you're actually passionate about, it might be a better.
I can go
through the chaff way.
I can go wherever, Peter. I am, I am with you. You are my Sherpa. I will follow.
Yeah, I'm specifically talking about you, Bob. Always, actually, I'm just always talking to. But no, you were part of one of the conversations I've had with Marshall. But I think I figured some reason or understood some of the love for him a little bit more. I can't say compares well to past prospects still, but I think Gamewell's an interesting one because I was listening. I really try not to until I've got a pretty good idea of what I think of players. But I was listening to you and J. Mike Check, which is pretty much an irresistible duo on the Dynasty Dummy podcast, talk about players. And you were both saying how much you hated Kenny Gainwell. And I just wanted to defend him a little bit. Because I think it's a little hard. I think it's a little harsh. I think but no, what? Let's start there. It's the only name anyone's mentioned. So Kenneth Gainwell, as Ray GQ from the Dynasty Devy podcast calls him because he's fancy and got money and stuff. So it's Kenneth, I guess. That's why Ray. I just keep throwing shade at Ray. I'm gonna get him. I'm gonna make him respond to me on something somewhere, and that's my new one. But yeah, Kenny or Kenneth Gainwell. What do you think of him?
I love Kenny Gainwell. He's right now film grade wise is my third running back off the board. The only question, and if you listen to the dummies, the only question is he's small. He's just not a big guy. I've got him listed at 191. J Mike had him at 182. Neither of those are instilling any confidence in me. And if he's going to be, if you're going to take him that highly, he's got to be a multi-down back. He's got to be a guy who gets carries and somebody who gets targets. And as an undersized back, it's really tough to see. 191 pounds is not gonna cut it in the NFL. And even if he could be successful, the NFL, they're going to look at him and say, "Nah, you're too small." I mean, that's just they don't. If you don't look like something that they've seen before, they're not betting on it. And
no, I'm just waiting for you to say how much you hate Giovanni Bernard and Philip Lindsay, and
I love
Tariq Cohen never had a good season, and that guy in New England was trash, and it was just a mirage.
but you wouldn't take them. So like
Barry Sanders again, sucks.
But you wouldn't have taken them in the Sanders maybe a little bit. You're reaching there, Peter, but like the 51 receptions last year, the fact that Gainwell is fantastic in the middle, even though he's undersized, the fact that he can break tackles and elude tackles, he's got real good contact balance. He's got that ability, and I talked with J Mike about that, but he does a kind of contorts his upper body to create glancing blows, which means he can keep running even if he's being hit. All of those things you love. Plus, he's got that ability as a space back. And again, man, if he is a little heavier, if he comes in at 200 pounds, then he could be my running back one. Like I like what his skill set is that much.
No, I'm actually with you in that I don't know I'm not going to insert pro day numbers into my day. I'm not going to sully it with pro day numbers, okay? Because I like the even comparisons. But I get that he's a smaller guy. Like 60% of Naheem's yards came from the rushing game, and that's one of the comps I have for Kenny Gainwell's overall profile. I think it's around 70%, 71% came from the rushing game for Gainwell. He's very much like the average for players who do well in the NFL or top 12 is around 9% of your touches coming from the receiving guard. That's not a predictive number, just described fairly well, like the Zac Reed rule, whether you have 20 receptions or more in a season, and what type of skill set you're displaying in college. So what type of skill set a team might be drafting you for is the idea. And Kenny Gainwell looks very much like a receiver. Interestingly enough, James White, who might be the most positive comp for the rough physical shape we're outlining here, 85% of his yards came from the rushing yard. He looks much more like just a regular 3-down running back than most of these receivers. It's much more the Naheem Hines type mold. What I would say is in the role that he was playing, adjusted by his conference average and looking at the best stats, like he's the only one who really shows up like significantly high on the all-time list. He's got 1.8 yards above conference adjusted weighted yards per team attempt, if you care to even track that metric, which I do. But if you look at the best stat, giving extra value to the receiving game, because we know it has extra value, then adjusted by the conference he was playing in. So you look at their average and you see how far over or under it was. I don't go through standard deviation just in case there's any nerds out there because I'm an idiot. I don't know how to do that. But I do look at how far over or under they were. And like top 10, top 12, I think all time, Kenny Gainwell's one season because he only really played one season and stepped into this role straight away. Well, he played 2 seasons and stepped into that role immediately, if I remember right, in that second season at age, what was it, 19 or 20? He's playing, 70% of his yards are coming from the rushing game, which makes him more of a receiver. And his total yards is 1.8 above conference average, which again puts him on a pretty impressive list. Now, with running back, I don't care that he only played 1 season in the same way that I don't care. And you should be for that just in case you want to be against it, because that's the reason Najee Harris looks good. I don't have to say things like we do at wide receiver, like, why wasn't he the running back one for the first 2 years? Who was beating him out? I actually don't even know the answer. I was meant to look it up, but I never did. Because running back's really about what you do when you get the role, or if you can earn the role at all. Now, for me, Gainwell did, but he does show more inclination, at least in college, for the receiving game. So any team that takes a shot on him has probably got that in mind as well. And frankly, for the running back position, unless you are just built different, and some people, like a wide receiver, are just built different. But at running back, it's a little harder to be built different because you've got to believe in the team investment. The team's got to believe in it. And then you have to stand up to a different type of physical workload, which a wide receiver typically doesn't have to worry about as much, at least. And it's more about how their size relates to the skill set they have to display, which is, again, a more complicated calculation and one we don't have right. With running back, it's a little more straightforward. But I see the ceiling you're worried about. But I got to say, for this class, only playing 1 season, it strikes me how much there is something that stands out on his profile, which is not something I would say about even the best prospects in this class. Not that they're not going to be the best fantasy producers, but I was pretty impressed with Mr. Gainwell. Kenneth, Kenny, whatever you want to call him. I think he's really good. And from there, we just see what the NFL makes of it, and that'll tell us more. But I would say, even with running back, like if a player like I remember them, like even if he gets undrafted and ends up in the Seahawks behind 4 200-pounders, like that's a guy I'm going to have my eye on. I'm going to want to add if I've got the depth, just because it does stand out. A player who does something that is good. And so I want to keep my eye on it. So unlike a few of these players that could fade, like I almost forget them, like Gainwell will stay in my mind. Like I still have players from the Austin Eckler's class that stay in my mind that have never done anything, to be clear. But just a shout out, like he's worth keeping an eye on, even if he does get low draft capital or whatever else.
I think that's the thing too with and the difference between, to me, wide receiver and running backs when you're attacking rookie drafts, where if a wide receiver doesn't get draft capital, it's a quite a climb to get back in, because you're having to climb at least 3 or 4 people on the depth chart. Whereas a running back, if there's an injury in front of him, there's a chance that he can get it. I mean, it's the James Robinson this past year, where there was Fournette got shipped and there was an injury, and all of a sudden, James Robinson can get in and do what he does. I see you got a numbers question. I'll cede the floor.
Akash, I apologize for murdering that name, but as someone just said in chat, I murdered Travis Etienne's name, so I'm probably going to murder everyone's name at this point. And that's just a flaw of mine. I apologize, but he asked what the ideal BMI is for running back, and the question is, I don't think that, like, I don't use combine, like, screw BMI. I'm strongly against BMI trutherism, but if I were to come up with an answer for it, at a guess, if you were to ask BMI truthers, like the average BMI for running backs with top 12 seasons is around 30. Yeah. So I think that's probably in and around what they're aiming for. Like running back 30, 32 is probably the average they're looking at as being ideal. But again, some guys are just built different. Like their bones are denser, I guess. I don't know, but BMI doesn't tell you anything, but that would be the range I think most would be voting for. Hey T King, what's up? I nearly called you Travis Etienne there. That's probably a compliment. I've got questions about CEH. And 215 pounds, no idea. I don't I don't look. But yeah, I think he was in and around there. And the other player, the other rookie at least that's been mentioned is Etne. Someone wants to know he's good and they can like him so they can go to sleep, I believe was the comment, and feel good about themselves. So, yeah, Travis Etne, how about him?
It was interesting. I listened to your show the other day where you talked about ETN and Najee Harris, and it was funny because the things that you were saying about ETN being more of a pass catcher and not as much of a traditional runner, I'm pretty sure you watched the film on that. I don't think you got that all from numbers. I think you were watching, but that's exactly it. ETN is a space player, a guy that you can get on the edge, and if a defender takes a bad angle, you can't catch him. He's so fast. He's so quick up to speed. And this past year, he improved his pass catching so much. Before, it was an absolute adventure every time the ball was thrown at him. Now he just looks afraid for his life until he catches it, and then he can take off. But there's progress. So
I did have a question listening to you two talking about Etne. Are you the last time I remember someone describing the way they look, and you know me, always grinding the film, so I've got so many examples. Jeremy Hill is what kept coming to mind. And that's not a name you two mentioned, but long hit runner or Tevin Coleman. Those are the two that come to mind when you describe those type of things. And neither of them really worked out. That's my concern. Not from the numbers, but from what you're saying.
But Coleman didn't work out though because of injury. Like he had a couple years where when he was not hurt, he was taking chunk runs. But even he
so did Hill, to be fair.
Yeah, but even neither of them were, I would say, the pass catcher that ETN is. And that to me is that's the break that I had with Ronald Jones too, because Ronald Jones looks fantastic if you can get him in space and let him go in a straight line, but getting him out there is more difficult because he doesn't catch passes. I don't know if I don't know.
See, this is my again, I'm always grinding the tape, so this is an authority speaking. But when I think great receiving back, especially in the modern era, I think Kamara, I think McCaffrey, and none of that fits them. They're great receivers. You don't need to get them in space. They just can.
But there are but
that doesn't match up to my archetypes, I guess is the way of saying it.
No, but he's a tier down from that. But to me, a player that has the receiving upside, I'm much more interested in taking that swing on a guy with receiving upside than a player who doesn't. Well, so take, for example, last year, there were a lot of people in on A.J. Dillon. He had a great game and a half for the Packers this past year. Everyone compares him to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry just had the 6th greatest single season in history, rushing, and he finished 3rd in PPR behind Kamara by 80 points. 80. So he had you talk generational. This wasn't generational. This was historical. The 6th best rushing season in history, and he finished 80 points behind Kamara. He actually finished closer in points per game to Chris Carson than he did to Kamara. So to me, the pass catching of ETN versus any of those other guys that you mentioned, with Jeremy Hill or Tevin Coleman or that, he's that type of runner, more closer to Coleman than Hill, but he's that one cut. If you get him in his own scheme and can get him, a cut and gone, I love that. But he's also got the pass catching upside. I mean, I've got him right now as my 4th running back with my film grade, behind Gainwell, behind Javonte Williams, and behind Najee Harris.
So he's a better runner between the tackles, I guess, would be the official tape term, than Hill or Coleman, or on the same level, but also a better pass catcher.
He's, like I said, he's similar to Tevin Coleman. Look, Jeremy Hill to me was a grinder. Jeremy Hill, at least when I watched him, was a between the tackles, he's going to get you 4 or 5 yards, and if you get him a hole, he can take off. But at that point, like, I much preferred the Gio Bernard to Jeremy Hill, even though Jeremy Hill was the guy carrying the ball, because Gio was the pass catcher, and so you knew he was always going to have a role. I think it's similar. ETN has got that Tevin Coleman, that zone run, that ability to break a play at any time, but he also has the ability to catch 30 or 40 balls, and to me, that's, if you're looking at a top 10 or top 24 or whatever you're looking at for a running back, 30 plus catches is where it's at.
Is that within this draft class though? Because I worry, like, Etne and I guess Najee Harris, who sucks, stand out in this class, at least for me, a little bit as a different kind of profile, more similar to the guys that we would want to draft highly. But like, I worry that Etne looks good because there's no one else.
Yeah. Oh, there's certainly some of that. Like, so for me, ETN was behind Dobbins with my film grades. So ETN last year, we actually profiled him because we thought he was going to come out with the 2020 class.
All right.
And we were like a week too early. We jumped the gun and they hadn't done all the declarations. And so we were like, all right, ETN is going to declare. So we talked about him. I had him graded out as my 6th back last year. So you're talking, he was behind all of the regular cast of characters, the Jonathan Taylor, the Swift, Dobbins, Akers, and Hilaire, and then it was ETN and Harris. So if you're looking at this class, I don't think that they are on the same level as the class that we just saw.
Why would he be behind? But someone mentioned Swift in the chat, actually. Why would he be behind Swift? Because one of the things that stood out to me last year was I believed it because I believe what people tell me, believe it or not. believe. But Swift was underproductive. He was less productive than most players that come from his conference and are successful. He had highlights like a Kenny Gainwell stat line, things that stand out, which helped me believe. But like, he was actually less good than other players from his team, from his conference, that have gone on to be successful in terms of all the stats, pretty much, which is why he actually had a significantly, he was below that tier. He would come out under Etne and Harris pre-draft. Obviously, he got draft capital and so on and so forth. But I had concerns with him. So what does Etne do that's worse than Swift, I would guess?
So
question.
Swift was a much more natural pass catcher. I mean, he could go out and run a wheel route and make a play over his shoulder, make a back shoulder catch. Like, ETN still is like watching a Stephen King movie in that 1.5 seconds between the ball getting to him and him making the catch. He's still afraid of that, which means he's not processing what happens next. And I think that that's something that you see with Swift, where he was very, very good at being a pass catcher and transitioning back to a runner. And that's something as a running back, that's where you get your yards after the catch. I mean, and it's the same thing with slot receivers. It's that ability. It's like being a punt returner. It's that quickness in short spaces. The other thing with Swift that I think is different than ETN, Swift looked like a scat back coming out. Like, he was 5'9", but he was also had the ability to like lay his shoulder into people and break tackles that way. And I don't see that with ETN. ETN is the speed guy. He's not running you over. He's not making dazzling lateral cuts to get open. And I think that DeAndre Swift was my 2nd back coming out last year.
Someone called NFL Draft Talker says I'm not listening to what you're saying, and I would have I'm professional fake listener. So yeah. No, I didn't hear a word of that. No. Either of these two, like, typical draft order, and I know we're not really doing ranks. We're trying to understand what they are in comparison to the rest of the players in the class, but like, normally you've got to draft running backs above wide receivers, typically.
Yeah. Not this year.
Or at least that's what ADP says. And that's not where you're at, right? You
No.
would take wide receivers over these running backs, even with all that top 12 potential you were just mentioning that I didn't listen to.
That was Swift. We already drafted him. We already had him in the top 3 last year. But with this class, I've got 3 wide receivers that I prefer to the running backs, because when you mentioned this, you called me out. I heard you a couple shows ago where you were talking about, and you got me wrong too, because I
called
usually
too many people out, man. I can't remember.
I break ties toward running backs in rookie drafts. Like, that's because I think that they tend to be the asset that matures quicker. You get production quicker, and right now, because everybody is in running back mode, people are willing to trade for them. So you can flip a running back right now because everybody thinks they need to have running backs, and get the second year or third year wide receiver. Although it's starting to shift, you're starting to see that pendulum back toward wide receivers. I think there's a saturation point with running backs. There aren't a ton of landing spots. Back to your original question, I think that there are 3 wide receivers that are better, that are in a tier above any of the running backs in this class.
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, who?
No, who are those guys then?
The three receivers. I think for me, it's Rondale Moore is my 1, which people will poo-poo and say that I'm hot taking. Jamar Chase is 2, and Devontae Smith is 3. I think those 3 players are head and shoulders above any of the running receivers.
Devontae Smith, you said?
Yeah, that's the one.
All right, yeah, we're gonna find.
You're gonna have to scroll way down. I know.
Yeah, no, not that far. Just a while. Rondale Moore's problem, if he has a problem, which he doesn't, but it said he played 1 season. Essentially, he didn't play enough after that, and especially once you test points or look at points per game and realize, oh, I would have valued players over Megatron in his own draft. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Then you just stop doing it. But like, what does he do better than Chase, or how is he better at what he does more so than Chase, that you have so much more hope for him than?
Well, and I don't think, like, there's not a lot separating those two for me. I think that the top tier is pretty close, but I do tend to break toward wide receivers that I think can drive volume. So Chase is a lot more of a downfield player. He is more of your prototypical X wide receiver that can go out on the edge and go downfield. Rondale Moore is only 5'9", which is going to be the big question, is he's a small guy, but he is a very, very quick operator out of the slot. He kind of fits that new mold of NFL passing attacks where he can get off the line quick. He's so fast out of his breaks. He creates that separation. It's almost that crossover. It's that Iverson, plant on the outside and then cut away from a defender. See, Jake, I don't get the Rager vibes with
I do, because they both
Rondale
were really good in college. I get it.
Yeah.
And like, this is a rare instance where I agree with Zac. Like, they're both really good in college. I don't understand the shade. I don't understand why that would scare you. Oh no, he looks like a good player. What the hell is that meant to me?
So I think to me, Rager was, you had to scheme him open. Like, he was really good once he had the ball. I think that Rondale Moore creates enough separation for himself that you're not worried about that. I think that you could see him be a really dynamic player from the slot, being able to work over the middle, being able to catch the ball and make plays after he's got it, and also drive the volume. I mean, he should be at a point in his career where in 2 years you're seeing him catch 100 balls. And to me, in fantasy football, where we're primarily PPR, that's the type of player that I want. And it's not shade at Jamar Chase. Like, I think Chase is fantastic. And more prototypical, more like if you're talking Calvin Johnson or Julio Jones or that type of player, Jamar Chase looks a lot more like those guys than Rondale Moore does. I just think Rondale Moore is the player that is going to drive more volume to him, is going to give easier throws to a quarterback, and therefore is the kind of player that I'm going to be looking for my fantasy team. The nice thing about Moore, though, is Chase is going to go in single quarterback leagues. Chase is going to go 101 or 102. Like he's going to be Rondale Moore. I think you're going to be able to get at 108, 109, 110, 111. I think he's going to be that value. So 2 years ago, the value was A.J. Brown that you got down there. Last year, it was Justin Jefferson. You're getting 107, 108, 109. I think this year that value is going to be Rondale Moore.
I'm not sure. Normally, the value, as I see it, is T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, and it's because they're good, but they don't pop in some way. There's nothing to what's the word? The truther over. Like with Rondale Moore, the nerds get to truther over his age-adjusted production. And so we're going to push his ADP. There's a nerd in every draft, and we're like breakout age. Now, I've got some concerns in that the NFL literally typically doesn't spend more than a fifth-round pick from players from his conference.
Right.
No, they haven't spent more than a fifth-round pick as long as it's been called the West or whatever it is, since 2015, as far as I can tell. I also don't have a lot to compare him to. He has the best age-adjusted season of anyone, really, of the last several draft classes at age 18 when it's, that's the first year. So that's pretty cool, unless you're Juju Smith-Schuster and you play when you're 17 because you're some kind of monster. That's it. He broke both the 20 and the 30% thresholds, arbitrary thresholds, though they may be. He literally trashed them, so increase it, I guess. But I don't have a lot I don't have a lot of players who did that and then didn't go on to play more. So you could see if it's sustained. Normally, if there's one good season, it's the last season, senior difference, and I know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with that when you do it the first year. But having said that, so it's a conference and the fact they didn't see him play more, and that's more to be fair and apply the process evenly, because if you see them play more, maybe you get more insight and maybe it's less negative, but it's good to see that the tape backs it up. And now I just say that from now on. Tape says it's good too.
I've got a question for you. How are you kind of coping with 2020 with the metrics? Because for me, it's really strange, although I'm getting, 6 to 8 to 10 to 12 games that I can kind of choose from. How do you do that with the smaller sample size? Are you just kind of taking averages, or what's your?
I don't use last season nearly as much as other players. I'm more interested in what they do when they don't have everything going for them, and that's when I think you see most of their potential. Well, that's what seems to be true through past prospects that have a decent, and I actually played a decent amount in college, and you learn the most about them when they're playing their first, second, and third seasons. So players like Jamar Chase, who chose not to go back, I mean, I would like to have seen it, but I've already seen him be pretty much consistent with what good players do when they're in college from a good conference, so I don't really have many concerns. It actually concerns me most when players did play, like a Terrence Marshall. I hate to say it, their stats may be adjusted up depending on who was missing, when they were missing, how much that had an effect on it. But I'm yet to hear much concern from someone who watched the games. That you haven't mentioned, they were playing against a second-rate defense because all the good talent was staying off of the COVID list or anything. So I haven't found much of a reason to adjust it. Now, there is some inflation in last 2020 stats in terms of overall production. So it does make me think, like we saw in the NFL, it actually served more to inflate production than decrease it, which hurts more when you're comparing them to past players than it does to compare them for themselves. And since rookie drafts are their own isolated event, mostly it's fair. Or mostly, it's not doing much to me at all. But, Travis May calls me a heathen for a number of reasons, and I'm sure that's one of them. So I'm assuming he calls me a heathen. He's normally very nice to me in person. I assume he turns the corner and just says nasty, mean things because I bait him a lot. And he is yet to be mean, so I'm assuming he's doing it in private. But, yeah, Travis May, who works for RotoViz now, I believe. He has more of a holistic overall career, so it might affect his, or he might have to make more adjustments for it than some freaking Yahoo like me, who's just like, hey, age 18 is all that matters, baby. Not really, but you get it. Thoughts on Bateman? He's great. Shut up, Jake. But yeah, Jake wants to hear your thoughts on Bateman if you want to. And he's in my top tier as well. I have a pretty substantial, heavy tier 1 in my wide receiver rankings, and like they're all in it. Like I like them all. I want them all. So Bateman's in there.
Bateman's at the top of my second tier, and it's funny watching him.
Got it.
It's funny watching him because you can watch him have a game. So I watched. He had a 177-yard game. He had 16 catches, and at the end of the game, I was like, "What did I? He didn't do anything. What did I just watch?" But the more you watch Bateman, I think the more you understand. Well, the more you understand that he just does everything really well, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's one of those where Bateman can chameleon. He can win from the slot. He can win from the outside. He can play on the sideline, toe tap and back shoulder. He attacks zones very well. I really don't see very much other than I don't think he ever feels fast. And sometimes that makes his routes, long to develop. He takes his time with that. But man,
don't you think it's weird whenever a player is underproductive, the second excuse I always hear is, but they had good players on their team. But the minute a player is productive, like everyone forgets to check. It's almost like they have no process. But Bateman was doing this with Tyler Johnson.
Yeah.
And again, I know he went in the 6th round to Tampa Bay. He has a Super Bowl now, and everyone knows he's good. So it's a little bit after the fact. But there was real questions of him coming into last year, and he did get low draft capital. And the fact that Bateman was literally co-opting so much of a large share of the offense with a player, whether you think he's as good as his Super Bowl ring or not, he has a Super Bowl ring, by the way. He was doing it with another player, co-opting like a huge part of the offense. And again, we don't see that very often, even in college. Right. Is Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson both good? Yeah. And it's really impressive that Justin Jefferson did it with an Adam Thielen. Like, it's an extra plus, at least in my mind. Like, does that do anything for you to move him up from that second I hate these guys tier for you?
I hate these guys too. No, like I think that he's a good player, but going back and watching the 2019 stuff and the 2018 stuff from Bateman, most of what I'm impressed with is Tyler Johnson. Like Tyler Johnson,
he's awesome. You don't get a Super Bowl ring for not being awesome.
He was the best receiver on that team for both of those years, 2018 and 2019. Tyler Johnson was the best receiver in Minnesota. Last year, or this past year, obviously Bateman was there on his own, took another step forward, looked great. Even last year, he was fantastic, but still my eyeballs say Tyler Johnson was more of the player that I was looking for. The thing, though, that I love about Rashad Bateman, and I mean, this doesn't show up in your numbers, and it may not even matter, but Bateman pays attention to like little details, even so much where like when he releases off the line on a play that is a run or something that's on the other side, he releases hard and decoys the corner and takes that guy out of the play. Which, I mean, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but that means he's locked and loaded on every single play, and he is doing exactly what he needs to do on every single play. And I like that for a mentality for a player.
I have, I remember one of my questions / statements I want you to respond to. It makes more sense to ask someone, or someone who watches can answer it and I can't. Right. Like, I wonder.
We got Jake on. We're good.
Basically, that's the NFL draft talk. I've never met him before. But no. Do you make adjustments, or is there anything you can observe, or does it strike you sometimes if a player's making amazing physical moves, right? That probably looks impressive on tape, and then I tell you that he's productive or by underproductive or whatever it is. And I'm going back to Terrence Marshall here, but
Yeah.
we cannot. Just while you're watching, does it ever strike you that if a player is doing fantastic things to do what other players just do as a matter of what's the way of saying that? He's saying Moore just looks good. He's not doing outstanding things, but he doesn't have to do outstanding things to be fucking amazingly productive. That to me, and maybe it's just because I watched Tom Brady win and no one's ever said Tom Brady does amazing things. He just does everything well and calmly, and so well and so calmly that he wins 7 fucking Super Bowls. And I was thinking through that, and I was like, is that true when you're watching a player? Like, you see a player making amazing moves, but he's not like Calvin Johnsoning up the league, or some extreme, like he's not getting the largest receiver. He has to do all of that to get good production in college. Like frankly, the idea reminds me of if you're an amazing athlete and you don't produce, that's a concern, not a plus, because you've already got all the advantage. And so if you're using everything you've got to produce as a wide receiver 1 in your senior year in college, isn't it more positive that Bateman isn't having to light up with athletic one-hand catches in order to be productive? Like, is that potentially true? Or like, I don't know. It's just a thought.
That's exactly. So I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to give you a baseball anecdote, because that's what I do, and then I'll come back and I'll read you my open from my Bateman write-up, and it's exactly what you were just saying. But in baseball, when you're looking for a pitcher and you're looking for, everyone's looking for a pitcher who throws at 95, but you want to find a guy who throws easy fast. So it's a player who doesn't look like he's straining. It doesn't look like he's putting in the effort and still throwing that 95, because that when he does put in that effort, there's more behind it. And that's that same idea with what you're talking about, where if you're giving everything you've got to be at a okay level, going to the next level, you don't have anything else to, there's nothing else there. As for Bateman, what I said was, at first glance, the Mona Lisa is a smirking woman in a drab dress seated in front of a winding smudge of a road. If you're not looking carefully, you're going to miss the subtle genius of Da Vinci, and Bateman has a similar quality. And that's it. Like, you watch him and you're like, oh, he didn't really do, but you watch him like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, and you're like, he's still getting open and he's still doing things that you're like, oh, well, that wasn't spectacular, but it doesn't matter, because he's open and he's making catches, and he's got the ability to shift. He can be multiple receivers for a team. He's the type of player that fits that, where we were talking about number 1 receiver sliding into the slot, taking more plays in there to exploit matchup problems, but then being able to go back on the outside. Bateman is exactly that. He can play on the inside. He can play on the outside. He attacks zones. Like, I really don't have very much to say bad about him. He's going to be a player that if somebody scouts highlights, they're not going to like him very much. But no, he's like I said, right at that top of my second tier.
I'm just saying, my plan for 2021 is to reunite the Minnesota wide receivers on my personal fantasy teams. I know Jamar Chase very accurately and clearly stands out. I mean, if you do like to diminish or boost players based on receiving talent, just remember Chase was having productive seasons, adjusted by age, conference, or whatever else you want to look at, with Justin Jefferson on the team. Like, that, if you like that aspect to analysis, I don't, but and so that helps boost him up a little bit for me. But we also have a remarkable strikeout rate with wide receiver 1, specifically in Dynasty, and that's not logical, but it does make me hesitant, and that makes me, or helps me to enjoy, the potential value of Bateman, and the other guy I have in my top tier. I really don't have him ranked, but if I were to, it's Chase, Bateman, then Elijah Moore, then Rondell Moore, and I really need to hear you say how much you hate Elijah Moore, but no one's asked about him yet. In typical fashion, No one else wants to talk about the best wide receiver coming out of the SEC West this year. Like, that guy doesn't matter. It's Devontae Smith, apparently. It's not. But anyway, we'll get to it. I like Joshua's comment here that AB made it look easy in his prime. I can think of a few players named AB, but I'm assuming it's the AB, so I kind of like that comparison. If you just make it look easy, that sounds like a narrative you can get behind, at least, as well as any other narrative. So yeah, let's go Bateman. And Mr. Patel saying the same thing here, and Jake throwing more shade over here. I imagine Peter doesn't even smoke; he just he just needs after listening to Zac talk. It's true, man. I think you should spend some time trying to listen to tape grinders. It's an experience. And thank you. I really appreciate that, Ashka. Yeah, let's talk about Elijah Moore, because I'm just saying he's the most productive based on my process for measuring players to pass players from the SEC West. That's the most drastic conference, the most highest hit rate conference because of that draft capital, essentially. And I really like Elijah Moore, and I was recently accused of hyping up a player that's too overhyped, and I'm yet to see him on a single ranking list, so I don't know how he's overhyped and underhyped at the same time. But, you know, coming in, not knowing the player, having never watched them, like, it's hard to be biased when you've never watched nothing or rooted for a single one of these teams. Like, he has the second highest score on my pre-draft model, as if that means shit. It doesn't. But when you compare him to past players, he looks great. He looks very productive, but I hear he's tiny, and apparently that matters. Is that the analysis? Like, he's tiny, so he'll get crushed.
No, I mean he's fine. He's what, 5'9", 185. Like, he's not Jamar Chase. He's not Tamorian Terry, but he's not like teeny tiny either. He'll be fine. I think, for my money, Moore has probably the best hands in the class. I think he catches the ball really quietly.
Thing, but,
yeah. He catches the ball really quietly. He catches the ball away from his body. And although he's primarily a slot receiver, he makes the most of his touches. He transitions really quickly from the catch point to a runner. And it's funny because he carries the ball like a running back. And I noted that a few times. And then in 2020 against South Carolina, he got like the first 6 or 7 carries of the game. Like, they actually ran him out of the backfield. And I was like, see, he can do that. But he's really, really good at attacking zone defenses, which is something that for me has become kind of a benchmark, kind of that I look for in especially the slot receivers, but in all receivers. It was the thing that told me that Juju Smith-Schuster was going to be good. It was the thing that told me that Cooper Kupp was going to be good. It was the thing that told me that A.J. Brown was going to be good. It was the thing that told me Justin Jefferson was going to be good. That is something that I look for in wide receivers, and he is very, very, very good at attacking zone defenses. He breaks routes off before he reaches defenders, finds a throwing lane to sit down, and he also does this really interesting thing, which you don't see very often in college, where he uses multiple angles of attacks to beat zones. So most guys will sit in underneath, but he will use an angle to beat a zone on the second level, where like he'll pull a safety in and then go above him and make a big, like a splash play. That's something that I haven't seen a lot in college players. Unfortunately, I think that there are some things that are going to be problems for Elijah Moore. He struggles when guys get up and press him, which doesn't happen very often because he's in the slot. But when teams bring a corner up that can press him, he struggles with having speed, strength, technique, kind of all of those to separate. And he really doesn't block at all. Like, he does, like, he's just like,
he's tiny.
That doesn't exist. Yeah.
To take you all the way back to the start, what does most guys start from underneath mean? I don't know what that means, literally.
Most guys, what do you mean?
You said that he takes different angles
Oh
to
yeah.
attack zone, and most guys start from underneath or something like that. And I was like the turf or
no. So as a zone coverage, you have players playing an area rather than covering a specific receiver.
I understand the concept. Yeah.
And so usually you will see players get in behind the first level of a zone, but in front of the second level of a zone, and sit in there and create a diagonal passing lane for a quarterback, because all zones are cheats. Like they are all zones are cheats, and every zone has places that you can attack it, usually diagonal throwing lanes. And so he'll do that, but he'll also run at a safety that's in the second level.
So the angle of attack is different.
Force that safety to come up and commit to him, and then go over the top of that safety, which you don't usually see players getting over the top of zones from the slot. But the way he does it with angles is really, really beautiful.
Okay. So he's great, and you just compared him to like 7 different players who have all hit and are great. So again, he
feels like Sterling Shepard, Jamison Crowder. Nasty. Well, no, but they're good players, and I think that he is better with the ball than those guys. But he creates separation like Shepard and Crowder. So like driving volume, but with the ability to make plays afterwards.
All right, Jake's demanding attention again. Watching Peter listen to film evaluation is life. Yeah, it's like a dog watching someone do a crossword puzzle. Yeah, I know. And Gamer should just play wide receiver. I'd just like to say, Jake, stop believing that you have the provenance to tell everyone else what to do with their life. He's his own man. He can decide what to do with it. Like, stop giving us all orders, okay? You're so bossy, all right? Pete should just watch tape. Elijah Moore to the Giants. Ooh. Could I get like a quarterback instead of that? But yeah, okay. I just want him to be drafted at this point. Like I don't hear, unless it's literally on my feed because I mention him. I don't hear, and again, it's from the SEC West, which everyone's meant to like, but still, no, he's overhyped. Because no one mentions it. I don't understand it. I have to wait to see ADP or what the NFL thinks, I guess. And Jake did want to see what you thought of Kadarius, I guess the name is Tony, and I'll just read out what I've got here because it's real. It's pretty easy. He played 4 years before finally hitting the heights, quotes, of 22% of the team's receiving production in his final year, with all the senior difference and physical development working for him. Just not for me, dog. Like, that's it. That's what I got. Like, he never the path. But I've been told he moves in a certain way, which is pretty impressive. I've also seen a comparison to Curtis Samuel. It was actually a shade comparison, as in he's worse but similar type of player. So I really don't know what to make of him myself. He doesn't seem to have done much in terms of comparing him to past players, but educate me. What's good?
I mean, he's really fast. I think that's what everybody is seeing is he's very fast. And I kept having to go back and check because he's listed at 6 feet 193, and I'm like, no, he's much smaller than that. He plays smaller than that. But that's I really think that everyone is like, what could have been with like Tavon Austin, and we see another guy who is very fast and can catch the ball, and they're like, oh well, we got a second chance at Tavon Austin. I mean, he's fine. I got him at like 11. I don't love the Kadarius Toney game. I don't think he separates versus zone well at all. I don't think that he's got that piece of the game, which, so then you're talking about scheming him open or, letting him play on the inside and hoping that teams play man coverage. One of the other notes that I have is he is very slippery once he's got the ball. Like that's a nice thing. I mean, that like ability to slip tackles and tack on extra, but like I don't see all of the hype that he's getting. Like you're going to see some NFL team, the Raiders, is going to see him be very fast and add him way too early, and I'm going to be out on it. He's going to be one of these players that push down Rondell Moore or Rashad Bateman, and you and I'll be very happy.
I know there's not much there. There's not much there in terms of what they did in college. But I do want to hear your thoughts on Jalen Waddle. Is someone else asked about. But here's why. I think too much draft capital actually hurts those kind of players. I mean, it's a pet theory of mine, but players that didn't get to do much in college, no matter what argument I want to make, there is some, just to convert over to Jalen Waddle here, it reminds me of the two in that they didn't do much, but lots of people like some of the way they're moving and some of the beginnings of what they were starting to build on. In the case of Waddle, it's because he got injured. Right. And so there are some positive comparisons you can just pull up. Like DK Metcalf did more and was able to cross certain thresholds, but he was injured a lot, and so it was a struggle to see. You had to work and actually dig through a little bit. And Jake got that entirely wrong, and I was on him from day one. That's the true story there. I convinced him, not the other way around. But you could make a possible comparison to the way Jalen Waddle's career played out that way. And now Tony, not really. Toenail, whatever the hell his name is. But given the reviews I'm hearing of why people like him, it's about the way he moves. So maybe he was building on something and couldn't quite get there. So there's some comparisons. Now, Jalen Waddle, I can compare him in some way to Robbie Anderson. And that's what puts that idea in my mind, that these two players might have skills. Well, they definitely do based on what I'm hearing about them. But I'm not sure all this first round, I'm not sure it's a good idea. Just because I think you get more out of college, not just because I'm a college professor, but I think that you do more than just rack up numbers. I know, maybe I'm wrong. I was listening to Aaron Foster talk the other day, my spirit animal and personal hero. And he was saying basically in college, he felt burdened by the requirements to watch tape and review assignments too much because like, it's not that he didn't have to learn, but at a certain point, he knew what to do. He could be given a lot short. Like, it wasn't that hard to pick up. But I feel like there is development that goes on when you're playing in college against lower competition than the NFL. And these guys, especially Waddle, didn't get that. And so a little less expectation a little early might be possibly a route to a better scenario for that type of player. But yeah, is Waddle already preformed? Does he not need any of that? Or
so I think Waddle is going to be one of those interesting players where he's very fast, and so he probably will end up with draft capital just because he is. I mean, he's right kind of neck and neck with what we saw from Henry Ruggs last year, where Ruggs was like a 4.27 or something like that. And Waddle was, I say was because we don't know, he broke his ankle and
right.
I have never been as furious about a game that I didn't watch as seeing clips of Jalen Waddle come out in the national championship game and try to play. And I mean, like, it was awful watching him because you could see even the clips that I saw of him running pregame. His limp was awful. And then to put him out there, I mean, somebody has got to say, you know, you're making a business decision here, and if you won't, I will sit, get healthy. You've got an NFL career, but they didn't do that. And man, I was furious at that. But for Waddle, in terms of being a prospect, it's not just that straight line speed. He's also really quick, and he changes speeds, which is something that you don't necessarily see. So that wasn't a Ruggs thing. That wasn't a John Ross unless he was in the red zone thing. But Waddle will change speeds during a route and drives the defender to keep pace which with his acceleration is really, really nice. He has that really good lateral quickness, changes directions while maintaining top speed. So he can slow down the defender, speed up quicker than the defender can, and then turn much faster than a defender. Is versatile enough. He can line up outside and win with speed, or slide into the slot and win with quickness. I think, though, that he's going to be a better weapon for an NFL team than he is with your fantasy team, because he seems to me, again, the type of player who can rack up huge points in a week with like 2 plays or 3 plays, but isn't going to have the consistent volume. Like, that's just, I don't see him as being a player that drives the volume.
I'm reading through the comments. Basically, Jake's just saying fast guys are all that matters, and talent is just speed. He's got very bad takes these days. I know golf's ruined him. All right. Again, all I can say is that there must have been multiple prospects with similar traits that didn't get injured, I guess, or maybe that did, but there's barely any comparison I can make. I can make some comparisons to what Waddle did in college to a Robbie Anderson, which is interesting since I'm not looking at their air yards or where they're playing on the field, and he is primarily stereotypes as a down the field guy, although we saw another aspect to him this year. And I worry that a lack of at least experience in college doesn't at least mean that you need more time. And if either of these guys gets first-round draft capital, like, they're expected to be good day one. Like, right. I don't know any other way of explaining the progression of NFL careers, and whether teams draft them with the understanding they need to learn or not. They spend zero and give zero fucks about whether a player needs time or not. Like, the other thing I saw in that interview the other day was NFL team players just concisely saying it's a bottom line business. If you don't produce, that's it. Like, no reasonable, well, they know they're young, or they know they've been in. No, if they don't put, and I would worry, if I was a fan of these players, I'd be worried about first round draft capital rumors rather than encouraged. Yeah. Because, again, I have to spend more to get them in rookie drafts, because even I am not going to ignore a first-round wide receiver that with a bad profile. I will take them at a certain point, even if it's to trade them to you. And the NFL is going to want it. They're going to want it day one, pretty much. Well,
and we talk about this a lot, where the NFL is not a developmental league. As much as we want to project these players getting better in the NFL, and we want, like, if you are not ready to produce, then you don't have the opportunity to get better. Like, that's really the bottom line, where, like, if you can't come into the NFL and be where you're supposed to be and get open as a receiver and make plays, even if it's a limited sample in your first year, if you can't do that, then you don't get a second chance.
I would, especially since there are Tyreek comparisons being thrown around, I would go back and literally read articles from around the time that he started. It was him and Demarcus Robinson is the other guy still in the league, I believe. Demarcus. And I think he's playing for another team now. I think it might be the Chiefs, but he's a deep ball, high speed kind of a guy. And then in the 3-way time, the entire offseason, even I was paying attention to it, and I usually ignore that kind of stuff. There was a deep attempt at developing Tyreek Hill and these other two. And if he couldn't have paced them out that offseason, the first thing to note is Tyreek Hill wouldn't be a thing right now, which in some ways would be good considering who he is as a person. Apparently, allegedly, whatever the fuck you want to say, I believe it. And the other thing is, like, the team honestly did put in a lot of effort, and it's fairly rare to see them give that much of an opportunity to a player to develop, let alone a guy with low draft capital. All three of them had fairly low, and Tyreek Hill had none. But, like, if he couldn't have outpaced him that training camp, I'm pretty sure he's not a thing.
Right.
And it's actually rare that a team will run that actively and that openly. You can read reports from every practice report, and they're consistently separating them, running them on the same routes, and trying to make a decision between them. Most teams are just going to lean draft capital, which means Hill gets left on the pocket. If you don't believe that, go back and watch the whatever it is, the NFL show with the Raiders on it that year, where that undrafted free agent was just killing it every game, and they still fucking cut him when it came time to it. Like, he was better than everyone else, and we saw it literally play out and saw all the hype and the teams talking about, yeah, this guy could develop. Just cut his ass. Because they normally just lean draft capital, no matter what you do. So it's fairly rare you get a team willing to accept that the best player has no draft capital. And in this case, these guys presumably are going to get high draft capital, so it's not a concern. But it tells you something about the mindset of coaches and teams when they look at players who may need development. Now, if you want to tell me Waddle doesn't, and he's just injured, he's coming at an advanced age, he's mature, I would say that's a positive, not a negative, strangely. But most players we see coming out at an older age have experience of games. So I want them to be good, believe it or not. Again, I want to win. And if they're good, I want them on my team so I can win more. But that would be what I'd say about them. Their production doesn't measure up, but I can understand the excuse for Waddle. Tony, not so much, but okay. And they're going to need that draft capital, and at the same time, it might be a negative for them with less experience. Like, I'm just throwing that out there because everything's, it's an ADP game, right? It's compared to what? You like Devontae Smith, I like Elijah Moore, but you have to spend a first-round pick and I get him in the second. That's a big difference. That means I win even if I lose, Right. Yeah. Anything else to add on that before I ask you about why you like Devontae Smith, the biggest landmine in this draft class?
No, I like that. Like,
Chris Connolly, thank you. Yes, Chris Connolly was the other fella. Keelan Doss, yes, the Raiders. I asked everyone on Twitter the other day if they remembered him. The answer was no, believe it or not. So, can you guys talk Pitts? Yeah, we can talk a little bit of tight end, I guess.
So I haven't watched tight ends. I haven't watched tight ends yet. I have nothing to say on tight ends. Okay. Tight ends, I will not watch for another 2 weeks, maybe 3. I'll do tight ends and quarterbacks because they don't matter. Neither of them. Even Pitts, I don't care. I heard it about Fant. I heard it about Evan Ingram. They don't matter. I don't care. I'll talk Pitts in 2 weeks for you, Jake.
Just draft them in 2 years when you know if they're good or not. Like that's it. That's probably the move.
So I remember exactly where I was. I was mowing my lawn and I was listening to Matt Kelly talk about the tight end class that had Evan Ingram, it had David Njoku, and it had OJ Howard. And he said, get them now because they will never be cheaper. And here we are in the future, and I could get OJ Howard for like used toenail clippings. Like that's you just like tight ends do not matter. And the transition from the NFL or from college to the NFL and what people are asked to do as tight ends once you get to the NFL, it's night and day. Like college programs do not ask tight ends to do what the NFL does. I mean, if you're a tight end in the NFL, you have to know everything a wide receiver does. You have to know everything an offensive tackle does. And you have to know most of what the quarterback does because you have to be able to figure out, what's going on with audibles and what guys are doing with choice routes. And that's so like, I'll watch.
What I would say is even when it works out, Evan Ingram came in and had a breakout season like year 1 and was good year 2 and then got hurt. His value has decreased every year. Yeah. So even when it works out, it doesn't work out. What we like to do with tight ends is increase the value of the ones we think are going to hit and decrease the value of the ones that do. It's like free. It's 3 points, man. Just draft them in 2 years. Like that's my overall tight end. I used to have it very set in stone. Now I just wait until everyone gets tired of them and I go get them then. Because then that's normally when they're productive. Tight ends play to a later age. They have the best career arc later in their career. And everyone's so bored of them by that time. They're just like, you want TJ? Do you want Hernandez? Yeah, sure, I take him. Do you want Gronk? Sure. Do you want Jimmy Graham? Yeah, sure. I mean, it's just, that's it. But every now and again you get a Kittle, but really that's just Kittle, and most of them don't get drafted in the first round. But Kelsey, even who's probably the most productive of all of them at this point, Again, he took a while to come out. I think he was taken at the end of the first round in rookie drafts, and then you got him cheaper later.
I took Travis Kelce.
That's my thoughts.
I took Travis Kelce in the startup of my home league. So this would have been his second year as the last pick in the draft. He was Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last pick his second year in the league because he got hurt. And then, and guys like Kittle and that type of player, Andrews, and you just look for tight ends that have a really good athletic profile that nobody's drafting. Like that's, and you can spend a third, a fourth, a fifth. You can spend a third and a fourth and a fifth. It doesn't matter on those guys, because if one of them hits, it's great. If not, you're not really throwing away any draft capital. I mean, how often do you hit on a player in the third, fourth, fifth round anyway? But if you hit on a tight end that ends up as a top 12, you're probably feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, and probably got to wait 3 years. I only have 2 tight ends, which I really have notes on so far. One's Pitts, and I said, yeah, I get it. BMI isn't what you want, but I don't care. He was productive as a wide receiver in a good conference while playing tight end. He's 6'6" tall. He's around 246 pounds. Someone told me, you call him small. I'm not going to call the 6 foot big guy small. Like, you go say that to his face, and I'll believe your analysis. Outside of that, I don't know how he's going to work out, but he did everything he could as a receiver to say that he's good. The other one is actually Cade Otton. There's a stat I've got in my tight end tab, which is efficiency. So essentially yards per team pass attempt, like the one I was talking about with running back, but per pass attempt above conference average. And that actually likes tight ends quite a lot. And it didn't actually work out to be a good one to put in a model, but it does pretty well if you go class by class. Jimmy Graham was the only notable player who didn't stand out in it well, but was obviously the best player from his draft class. And Otton kind of stands out a little bit in that stat, and so I noted that. Those are my tight end notes. And everyone else, it just Trey McBride's got a weird 70% dominator. I think there's a team in my database whose stats are a little off because there's all these weird. I just got to check that out. And every other tight end I've got a note in here just says, I'm a level with you. The rest of this list is just the order of efficiency score. It's a tight end who really cares. Like that's
see, we agree. This is where film and metrics, we agree. We walk hand in hand down the beach.
You see that. Because since we're both dynasty players, we know that means that this year they are all going to matter. This is the year we get 3 Jimmy Grahams, 2 Gronkowskis, and an extra George Kittle on top, and they're going to dominate. But yeah, that's what's going to happen. I'm going to miss it, I guess. Right? I don't know. That's fair. But yeah. So the player I want to talk about a little bit is Devontae Smith. He's the most productive wide receiver in the SEC West. Again, that conference we were talking about earlier, most drafted, highest hit rate, as if that matters. In 2020, when stats are inflated slightly, and everyone thinks he's the second coming. Now, I've literally got a 40-minute rant. It's just me losing my freaking mind trying to explain how Terrence Marshall isn't that productive. I could do a similar, and I think it's too big to upload to YouTube. I've got no idea why I even recorded it. I think I could go like twice that on why Devontae Smith compares better to everyone who's ever bust with first-round draft capital than he does to anyone that's ever hit with any draft round capital. So, tell me why I'm wrong, and then maybe I'll talk to you a little bit more about why I really don't see it. He looks okay. It's the best I can come to. But, what blazing speeds does he have that are going to just own me, and he's a new DK Metcalf, I guess?
No, you're not going to mistake him for DK. DK is a little bit more of a physical specimen. There's a rumor going around, and it is unconfirmed. He did not weigh in at the Senior Bowl, but there was a rumor that he is going at 164 pounds. And if that is true, that is slight. That is very small.
It's skinnier than me, baby.
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, I can't say he's much skinnier. I'm like almost 2 of him. Well,
yeah, and I'm
not quite that
6'1"
much,
too,
but,
so I'm just saying. And I'm heavier than that, so.
But so my it's really funny. My open for Devontae Smith is every year there's a player who becomes the evaluation battleground between film evaluation and analytics. It's me and Peter, and Devontae Smith is a no holds barred steel cage match pitting breakout age, body mass index, and college dominator against the infamous eye test. Someone book Michael Buffer. I said, here we go. But like for me, look, Smith is primarily a slot receiver. He attacks defenses from the inside, but from the inside out, which is an interesting thing for a slot receiver. Usually you think of them going over the middle, but he's also really good at attacking from the inside out. And he doesn't necessarily play close to the line of scrimmage. He's got a really good jab step if he gets split out wide to beat press. And once he gets that space created, he's got a step on a defender. Smith is gone. Very good hands, catches the ball away from his body. And the thing that I love the most about Devontae Smith's game is that Odell Beckham slant route can take it to the house on any play. And he just he can, anytime he catches the ball in a slant and he's running kind of against the grain of the defense, man, he can house it. The flaw to me with Devontae Smith is his size. Like whenever he fails, it's because he was beaten with physicality, whether he couldn't separate through contact, whether he's getting blown up by a larger defender when he's blocking, or whether he's not the apex predator, at the top of a high point catch. Like those things are not going to get easier at the next level. Like they're just not. So I think that, he's already been an undersized player in a superior athletic conference. Moving to the next level is going to be tougher, but I think his ability to create separation and his ability to make plays after the catch is going to be hugely productive for fantasy.
Here's the secret. Like, I expected to come into this year and be able to be on team Devontae Smith. And it's actually my biggest concern with him, because all I keep thinking about is bright lights and inconsistency in how we evaluate players. Because last year I was all over, Devontae Smith was my go-to to shut up Ruggs truthers. It was like, if you like Ruggs, you must be fucking hyped for Devontae Smith, because that's the guy who's actually producing in the offense. He's got a decent breakout ages. It was a decent part of the offense pretty recently on a stacked team in a good conference. And this year he blew up in production. So I was expecting to come in and going, I'm going to draft Devontae Smith, and everyone would be like, nah, bruh. And then I draft him and everything would be great. But instead, everyone who told me, and anytime I challenged anyone with that, Devontae Smith is Devontae Smith good, the response was unanimous, like almost a no, he's not good. Like not even maybe he's developing or any of the shit you just said. Just no, Ruggs is Ruggs. And so I was like, I got one here. This is a guy on a good team who's actually more productive. Everyone hates. And so this year, everyone's like, oh, no, I've liked Devontae Smith since he was 6 years old. He's my boy. I'm like, except for last year, apparently. So he's pretty productive. He blew up for like a 47% dominator this year. Again, the highest scoring wide receiver by a factor of 2. Like he's twice the next guy in line, Elijah Moore, by the way. And in that conference that the NFL loves, and I was like, this is awesome, because no one likes Devontae Smith. This year, everyone likes Devontae Smith. So he's actually in my second tier, because that's my main question. He didn't dominate significantly compared to past good prospects, but he was good enough. But it really makes me question, like, are we just watching this great team in the SEC, and any player who's the one on that offense looks great?
I think
because Ruggs looked great last year.
the problem, the problem you're running into, I think, with some of the this evaluation and last year is some people don't clearly delineate whether they're scouting for NFL, for trying to predict the draft, which then yes, you would have had Ruggs high. He went high. He was the first wide receiver taken. He was or if they're trying to scout, they're trying to evaluate for fantasy football. And that's the thing where when I come out with my pre-draft rankings, which I'll probably do in a couple of weeks, where I'll drop my top 12 running backs and my top 12 receivers, and then after the draft I'll do my rankings and drop my film notes and that sort of thing. I specifically will say I am evaluating based on PPR fantasy football. I understand Ruggs will be drafted highly, and I understand that Ruggs will be valuable to an NFL team or could be valuable to an NFL team. But the chances of him being valuable to your fantasy team is virtually nil. And you asked me the same question. What did I think of Devontae Smith last year? And I told you, I don't know, because I don't watch them until the year that they come out, because I don't want to have a preconceived notion of a player. I don't want to have, and I don't listen to anybody before. Like, I just caught up on 3 weeks of your show a week ago because I don't want to hear you talk about players until I've looked at them. I don't want to hear Jake talk about players. I don't want to hear Ray Garvin talk about players before I've looked at them, because that colors my process. And I want to have as close to my own evaluation as I can possibly get. And so I think you're seeing that with the Henry Ruggs, where they were predicting NFL draft capital, which doesn't necessarily equate to fantasy football. And I also think that you're seeing at the end of this year that recency bias where Devontae Smith had 2 or 3 games at the end of the season on national television and bowl games where he blew up teams. He had 3 touchdowns and all of a sudden everybody was on him. And I'm just kind of laughing with J-Mike in the DMs because I already had evaluated my receivers. I'm like, Devontae Smith is my 3. This is what I see. I like him. I love that slant route, but he's undersized and it's going to be tricky at the next level.
I'm just mad, man. Like, honestly, Devontae Smith looked like the guy who could be a T. Higgins or AJ Brown. He did pretty well. He compares well to past prospects, but didn't do anything outstanding. And I tune in to the public debate this year, and everyone's like, "Oh, that guy from last year." But yeah, his is market share receiving yards graph, which again is just something I like to look at for an overall profile. These 2 first years are an issue. He didn't do the best earliest in his career, but again, most don't. All those little blue dots behind the green dots, those are all productive players in the NFL. Plenty have had production around that. So it's not a red flag. It's just not the most positive it could have been. And if you're going to be good late, like late breakout players like Brandon Marshall or Terrence Marshall this year, if you'd done that, if you had a 40% dominator in your last year, you actually have some comparables. Right. Devontae Smith did that. And he was actually good at 20 when everyone was talking about Ruggs. And so I'm just a little mad. Like, just a little mad overall.
You thought you were going to sneak one by us, didn't you?
Like, I get to be on an age 20 breakout player, and I'm the guy who and instead everyone's like, no, look at all those touchdowns last year. Like, that's it. Like, that's how you got him. You ass, obviously not you, but like bastards. I think he's decent. He has a problem on his profile, or it's not the most positive. The guys I have in my total tier, I've got a question about more, but not really, because I am biased towards players who show out early. So, they're in the first tier. Devontae's in the second purely because he didn't do that. But the rest of it, he compares very well. He's coming from a great conference. He looks fine. And I'm a little upset.
You need to start playing Devi, where you can draft guys like Devontae Smith the year before everyone gets on the hype train, on the bandwagon, because that's literally. But that's the reason why I like Dynasty, because I can wait until December and then do 2 months of watching these guys and be just as far ahead as everybody who's been, either crunching numbers or watching film for the last 3 years.
Yeah, I'm awesome. No. Do you have any thoughts on Diami murdering another man Brown yet? You watched them?
Yes.
I actually kind of like him. He's in that second tier for me with Devontae Smith again.
It's Diami, so you are on brand. It's not as good as Kadarius Toenail, but yeah, no, Diami Brown is.
I'm sorry, that's a better name. It's a better
I
name.
like that. I feel like if you release a show, the name of the show has got to be Kadarius Toenail.
Guaranteed,
I like
pretty
it.
much.
So back to a lot of attention is being paid to Jamar Chase as the premier X receiver in this class. Diami Brown is not that. I mean, like, he's in the next tier down, but he's not that much further back, and he is another prototypical X receiver. Brown has put up back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in the ACC. He gets behind defenses really, really well. He's got several release moves off of press. He's got a good jab step. He's got a hesitation. He's got a really nice stutter move, and he'll use them on their own, but then he'll also use them in combination, which, gives a defender another look. It makes your 3 release moves be, 9 release moves, which is a nice thing. Brown is also pretty good against zone coverages. He works angle routes very well and sets up in soft spots, creating those throwing lanes. But where he really, really excels is against man coverage, where Brown can use – he has these really nice, really subtle double moves to get over the top. And once he's got leverage, he's good at stacking defenders, which – I know you know this, Peter, because you're a film grinder, but Jake's in the audience, so I'll explain it to him.
Thank you, appreciate that.
But where
for
you
a
stack a defender,
for our nerd viewers,
he gets in front and can use his body to hold off a defender and giving himself some room to track and catch the ball. He also, he's a really good effort blocker. The problem is concentration drops, and he does these at really inopportune times. So, you'll see a third down where they'll need to get a ball or a ball in the end zone, and he just biffs it. And he's also prone to double catching, which leaves a window for a good corner to break up would-be catches. And physical corners can challenge Brown's ability to separate. So, there are definitely, nicks in this profile. I think his potential lies on the outside and his ability to produce downfield and on the sidelines. He can stretch the field. It's not the profile of a receiver that I typically gravitate toward. I don't like he's not quite one-dimensional, but he's close. He's really a go downfield, get over the top. And I like my my receivers more versatile. So I like Brown. He's good. He's in probably the bottom of that second tier for me.
He's in the second tier for me. And the second tier is honestly guys who could turn out to be that AJ Brown, T. Higgins. They compare well, but they don't look at all this age 18 shit that I like so well. And I've learned better not to just rely on that, which is why my first tier is a little more refined this year, but still has more players than I would typically put in it. And so he's in that tier. I like him. He just doesn't stand out quite as well as Elijah Moore. It doesn't stand out quite as well because of Rondell Moore's phenomenal age 18 season. Doesn't stand out well compared to the other players we spoke about, like Chase and Bateman either. But, he compares really well. I like him. If you were to guess at his ADOT, because I know you know what that is since you're a nerd. Like, where would you say he's roughly playing?
I would
Because I heard mixed reviews there. You talked about different places he played, but he's not
I think he's down.
versatile.
I
So
think
I'm
he's
trying
down. No, I think he's downfield. I think he's probably
downfield.
closer to. Yeah, I think he's probably closer to like. Man, I don't
12,
know, like
13.
Yeah,
instead of 10, right?
yeah. I think he's more of a downfield. Get behind the defense, that type of player than he is. He's not really a possession guy.
It's interesting. He seems to have kind of played on an island, as a note I've got in here, which is weird because he's the second-ranked player in his final year in terms of the percentage of the team's yards. So he's number 2, which, has shades of Justin Jefferson. That was a big concern with him. But again, his share is significant enough as the 2 that he stands out. So that's pretty cool. But like the top 3 in the offense are getting 13% less than most teams in his conference, according to your sex score, share over expected. And so they're playing on kind of an island with a huge share. And I kind of like that. It means they're pushing down ancillary talent. And yeah, Mr. Brown, let's just call him this particular Mr. Brown, stands out a little bit, and I like him well. And speaking of ADOT, like, I really want to know where Taylor Wallace plays. He's another guy in my second tier. Like, I like him. He's I don't want to run through my film notes. I'd rather hear what you think, obviously. But I get the suspicion he's a guy who works down the field. But then again, I had the suspicion that Mr. Brown was more not a slot. Like, that term doesn't really apply, but had a more regular ADOT, around 10 an average. He's playing more X, I think it's called. And apparently I'm wrong there, so maybe I'm wrong about Taylor as well.
So Wallace is a really weird evaluation because they love to run screens for Tylan Wallace, and that is not where he excels. And so they'll run bubble screens. Oklahoma State would run bubble screens for Tylan Wallace, and he would be consistently like tackled at the line of scrimmage on those, and it was just maddening. He's not really shifty, that's one of the things that you think of, that quick twitch, that shiftiness, that ability to create with minimal space is what you think of with guys that you're throwing bubble screens. Wallace doesn't really do that. But what he does do is he plays very physical downfield. He fights off defenders' high points very well. He plays bigger than 6 feet, at least I think. And he routinely breaks tackles when he's downfield after the catch. He's very good as a run blocker. He finishes blocks. And he's deceptively fast on deeper routes. Like, I don't think that you ever expect him to run by a defender, but he'll use like a little head fake and get the defender to commit one way, and then he can get past the corner and uses his speed to keep separation. He's a really strange eval. I don't think he's ever going to be the primary option for an NFL team, but I think he'll get on the field. And once he's getting reps, I think that he should command enough volume to be kind of in that second. Wallace is more to me in line with that T. Higgins, the guy that I'm not sure of, that enough of those players have hit that I'm going to take a second round pick and spend it on Wallace just because I think that I think that he's got potential for that to be worth it.
Yeah, I just want to correct myself. Mr. Brown was the number 1 in market share receiving yards. I was going to say that 6 score doesn't really make sense if he wasn't.
He must have been ahead of Newsome yet.
The other 2 were taking up less of the offense compared to him. That's why he's playing a bit of an island. Yeah, Tylan, honestly, the problem I have with Tylan is the sense I get from him is a bigger player who plays further down the field, and that makes me think more like a Denzel Mims, more like a JJ Sega-Whiteside, who are productive. And, struggling with so far. I've given up on JJ, and I still have some hope for Mims. Actually, his rookie season wasn't as terrible as some might think it was in terms of comparing it to past players.
I mean, he's no Michael Pittman, but whatever.
Yeah, he's better. So, but that's my concern. Again, to go to the types of players you like at wide receiver, you think of the changing nature. I'm not so convinced, but there are some teams who are utilizing more versatile players, advancing into the small guy metrics, I guess. And Talon almost is productive in a way that I would be more comfortable with 3 years ago. But so, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what the NFL makes of him, but I do like him. And again, he's in that second tier with Smith, Brown, and one other guy we haven't talked about who I'm slowly fading on, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I'm keeping him in there. But you know, work in progress. And Jake's burning up the chat, and I haven't looked. Sorry, Jake, I was not paying attention to you like I did every episode. We were on together. Sorry about that. If he was the unholy offspring of two current players, Taylor Wallace, who would he be? Denzel Mims and JJ Sega-Whiteside. There you go. Yeah. Feels like James Washington to me. That's bigger guy. I'm generally thinking bigger than James Washington is pretty tall though, to be fair, but I think he's more slender. But yeah, I wouldn't like him getting drafted as the way Washington was to a good team with other proven prospects. Right. Like, I don't know where I'd like to see what Talon go, which is part of my problem with him. He's a very solid college player, but like more than the average. He was very good for his team, whether he works out or not. He's talking more about James Washington, apparently. Mims greater than Pittman. Thank you. Obviously, you're just stealing my notes at this point, Jake. I'm just rambling. For Dimey. I don't know. I'm shocked to hear he's much more of a further down the field player. So I don't know. I kind of have to reassess what I think of him, because I was thinking more dynamic middle of the field player, which isn't. I don't know. Like you said, there's 5 different positions for wide receiver, I guess. Right. But I was thinking not Odell Beckham, but more he would have to play like that in the NFL as a versatile, dynamic guy in the middle of the field rather than a further down the field guy. But again, I have to reassess because I really didn't know that.
I mean, watching him felt a little bit like Deontay Johnson in college, which is not what he's doing in the NFL. But in college, Deontay Johnson was, get down the field and make big plays, and now his ADOT in Pittsburgh is like 6 feet. But
we're just coming up with nicknames left,
Dynamic
right.
Brown.
Dynamic Brown, I like it. And Mr. Toenail, and we're on a roll.
Kadarius Toenails is the best. It's better than whatever you call Travis Etienne.
Apparently, I call however I say it wrong. Someone said I should just say ETN and just leave it at that. Like, just pronounce those 3 letters, and I'll be closer. So I'm going to do that from now on. I will continue to get it wrong on purpose now, because I will make up for getting it wrong accidentally every other time. Just make it a bit, man. That's my
Horatio Ruggs.
That's my answer to everything. Just lean in. Who's your favorite player in this class we haven't talked about? There's got to be. Is there a James Robinson down here we're meant to know about and don't?
I don't know that there is a James Robinson, but the player that to me has that similar it's not even a profile, it's just a similar feel to me.
That's a good one.
Is Jarrett Patterson out of Buffalo, and he is not quite the pass catcher that Robinson was out of school, but to me, not a carbon copy, but there are some really impressive similarities in terms of Patterson finished 165 yards shy of the all-time rushing record at Buffalo, and he did it in 230 fewer carries than the guy that is in first. He picked up over 6 yards a carry, scored more than a touchdown and a half per game, and averaged over 120 yards from scrimmage. And again, it's small conference, so it's hard to tell.
So is David Johnson and James Robinson. You know, I mean, honestly, running backs almost come from there more often than wide receivers do, and neither of them is very often. But it's not a bad place to search.
Yeah, and he's a little undersized. BMI Twitter is going to hand wring because I think he's like 28.8 or something like that. So he's under 30. And because he's got the small frame, he kind of contributes to him. He'll give up yardage to avoid contact, which you don't really love. You like to be going forward most of the time if you can help it. When a defender gets early penetration, Patterson retreats, trying to find a way out. And they didn't use him in the passing game, but Buffalo didn't really pass at all anyway as a team. And so, I mean, they weren't Army, but they, you know, I think Army has thrown the ball like 360 times in the last 4 years. So like less than Trevor Lawrence has in any season. But I do like Patterson. He's very decisive when he has a hole inside and outside the tackles. Outside, he's like chunk runner. And inside, he accelerates very quickly to the hole, keeps himself compact through traffic. I mean, granted, he's not very big, so keeping himself compact is not tough. I mean, he's 5'9", 200 pounds. He also uses, and this is something you see a lot with the Chiefs running backs. I think they teach this. The Patriots running backs, they teach this, but he'll like half spin when he's wrapped up. So he can use leverage and kind of push himself forward instead of trying to run. So you have more leverage on the defense. And it also allows your offensive lineman to come and kind of push you without hurting you. And so that's something you end up gaining extra yards doing that. And like, look, it's going to be an uphill climb. It sucks not having the combine. This is the one time that I like having the combine is for players who are coming in from lower conferences, playing against lower level of competition, because you just get these checkpoints that say, okay, yes, he is athletic enough to be in the NFL. So everything that I saw, I can trust. Whereas sometimes you get guys come in and they're not athletic enough to play in the NFL, and they've just been beating up on really shitty competition.
Maybe. I haven't looked at him at all. I don't know if he even can. If he doesn't turn up in the CFB, his stats won't populate, so I just have to keep an eye out for him. Yeah, the combine's nice because at least we get this guy's a workout warrior argument every year, especially at running back. Yeah. And we're just not going to get that. I've heard a lot of wide receiver names, Jake asked. Chubb is a really interesting one to me. Like last year, I felt like he was in this top tier conversation, and this year he wasn't that much less productive. He turned up a little lower. But the fact that you're saying take him in the second and third round, like that's an easy yes for me on a running back with productive history. But I guess I need to know why he's suddenly so much more terrible from you, Zach. But a wide receiver, I hear a lot of names. Like I hear Amara Rodgers talked about a lot. I'm not particularly interested. Chataris Atwell is someone that turns up in my second tier that I'm not sure on yet.
I have an Amari Rodgers comp. Amari Rodgers comp. So do you have a favorite Chinese restaurant?
And not here, but yeah.
But you have one. So I want you to imagine the egg roll of your favorite Chinese restaurant. You know, it's the best one you've ever had. That's right. AJ Brown.
Yep.
Okay. Amari Rodgers is the gas station egg roll that has been turning on that little, the rollers for like 6.5, 7 hours. And you're like, it kind of looks like AJ Brown, but it's not at all. That's Amari Rodgers.
He doesn't look like AJ Brown at all. If it helps from my perspective, like I got him in red, which is the tier that reads "Never, not even if there was a fire." Yucky. Ooh. apparently. Age 20, breakout age 20%, no 30% breakout age. Played 3 full years. His career needs some context here. You should know that he played that year listed as age 17 in my database. So recorded his age 18 season is technically actually his second season. He played with T. Higgins and DeAndre Kane, who both basically kicked his ass no matter what age he was playing at in terms of opportunity. Like, I read through his profile a lot because I kept hearing about him, and I can nah, bruh, he's in my yucky tier. I think it's just a false flag. But Taurus Atwell is someone I really have to dig into a little further. I've got some notes on him. He was an early breakout age, but he didn't hit that 30% dominator, which Rotoviz likes, which is a much higher hit rate group. But I just want to know. He, again, profiles like a bigger player.
He's teeny tiny.
And I have more concerns these days with bigger players. I don't know why. I bet too often on Denzel Mims and JJ White.
He is not a bigger player. Tutu.
Oh, nice.
Is 5'9", 165.
Oh, I like him immediately. I like him better.
He is teeny tiny, but very fast. Like he can, if defenders don't respect his speed, then he is gone. But physicality really bugs him, and he can't run block because he's 165 pounds. I'm really worried about this class as a whole. Has a lot of players that I want to like, but they're so small that it's really hard to get on board. There are probably 7 or 8.
Team small guy, but that's normally because there's a little bit of a discount because of BMI and height trutherism. But yeah, I get what you mean. My problems with him in my notes here is he relied heavily on touchdowns, especially for his overall share of the offense, which again is never the best thing. I'm not going to ding a player too hard, but it's a little worrying. And also he played in what's called now apparently the ACC Coastal Division. And wide receivers tend to be particularly productive for that conference in that they have higher market share and higher yards per team pass attempts than most. And compared to those averages, he's kind of teeter-tottering. I don't know if that fits with your description, but that's why I wanted to look into him more. Overall, his production looks good, but then when I look at the conference and his heavy TD role, I'm just a little bit wary of him. The player I was really surprised didn't turn up higher in my model, if we're talking about sleeper, as Seth Williams. I really thought he would shoot up. And again, I get a tiny guy feeling about him, and he didn't. The model was kind of mute on him. I forgot to look at him closer. And so I was a little surprised to find him further down. I've got him in my third tier, the top of the third tier right now. Let's see what he played 3 full years, has a 19 age breakout season, maintained 30% of the overall offense for 2 straight seasons, which is always nice to see that progression and also that holistic dominance. No one beat him out, really pushed him out of that top slot. Let's see what else I said here. Using conference adjustment stats, 2 of his 2 out of 5. I can't even read this. The print's too small. You have to go look at it. But I mean, he was good compared to his conference, but it's a fairly high conference. Again, that's kind of why it didn't like Seth Williams. His conference is typically productive anyway. I don't even know where he's coming from. And once we're adjusted by conference, he kind of falls down a little bit. Auburn, that's probably it. I've liked a lot of production from Auburn, and only to find out that once you look at it in comparison to other players from around there, it's all right. But yeah, I kind of like Seth Williams a little bit. Keelan Stokes is the only other guy I've got on here with an age 18 breakout season, and you know how I like my biases. But again, he falls into the third tier, and it's pretty much on the basis of that. Someone, I think it was Ashker again, he mentioned Amon-Ra, and I really want him to be a thing because I would love Amon-Ra to be a name we have to say all the time. Like, that just sounds like a really fun thing to be able to have to do. And let me see, what have I got him? He has Amon-Ra waited until he was 20 to cross the 30% threshold, which is okay for that threshold. He had dominated over 20% every year, which is actually pretty hot. I like seeing all those green boxes across his entire college career. That was pretty nice to see. His yards per team pass attempt and average dominators were low compared to other players, though, around him. And for that matter, he just came off kind of okay-ish based on his conference hit rate, which is like a 4.6 hit rate and 7 7.5% drafted rate. That's the percentage of players that have come from his conference since 2000. Like, it's okay. It's not the SEC West, but it lines up pretty much with every other conference that gets draft capital. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm losing. Either you're losing me or I'm losing you, Zach. You're doing the whole robot thing right now. I'm just going to move on to Tamorian Terry. He's a guy who I really wanted to dig more into. He looked good when I initially was looking through the production. But the more I dig in, the less I like. He's actually fallen into my third tier here. He's got both of his breakout ages across the 20 and 30% threshold are age 20, which is okay, especially for that 30% threshold, but it basically means he did it all in the same year. So it's kind of a later breakout. Digging in a little more, I find a little bit more to be positive on, in that he only played from the age of 20 onwards, so he dominated the first year he possibly could. So we employ the Calvin Ridley or AJ Green rule, which is that's fine. If you don't play earlier, you can't be expected to break out earlier. He played later. Let's see, what else have I got on here in these notes? Shades of Calvin Ridley and Kenny Golladay again. The ACC Atlantic isn't well drafted. 4.3% of players have been drafted from the ACC Atlantic, but it has a pretty decent hit rate on those 4.3. 8.6% of them have actually broke out. So it's a well enough conference. I need more conference, and actually, more context is the note I've gotten here. He's a player I want to ask you about when my internet's working better, because I need to know more about how he's producing. Is he Golladay in some fashion? Is he more just a physical freak? I get the sense, based on some things I have heard from Ray GQ, that he's a workout warrior. He might have been the guy that blew up the combine this year, kind of a player, which is more of a concern that he doesn't stand out a little bit more if he's so athletically dominant over everyone in his conference. But again, I kind of need some tape context to know that. Yeah, and that's where I'm at on him right now. So he's fallen significantly from my initial take on him, but I still have some interest. It's hard to denote sleepers until you have draft round and see who everyone else is undervaluing. Right now, I think it's Elijah Moore, because I honestly think no one's looking at him. Yeah, I get the sense that the only time anyone ever hears his name is when someone's telling me he's overrated. Like that's it. That's ESB's brother, and that family has an eye for names. That family should get some sort of award for naming. Peter is such a boring name. Like, I wish they'd gone from an Amon-Ra or an Equiminius. It's so much more interesting. Hey, Jake, gonna fill in here a little bit. Terry has some off-field concerns. I haven't heard about that yet, which is concerning isn't the word. Upsetting. Worrying, not good, don't like that. Jordan Reed, spelt with an I, not two E's. There you go. Throw that out there. I don't think I've looked at him yet. I've looked at a lot of Oh, there you are.
Which one of those? Yeah, you just threw 17 receivers in a row, rapid fire.
I want to know what you think of Tamorian, because he's a guy I keep falling on.
Okay. Tamorian Terry is cute. 6'4", 210. My break.
Mm-hmm. I'm hearing every other word. Sorry. I did get the impression you're calling him big guy, team big guy, right? It'll come back. It always comes back eventually. It's fine. But yeah, tomorrow is someone I want more take context from. Amon-Ra, I really need to know what the NFL thinks more than anything else. Seth Williams, yeah, I got a lot of hope. But no. Keelan Stokes is the other guy I'm going to ask you about when you can speak. So it's Tamarian and Keelan. Those two.
So Stokes, I haven't watched enough of to have a real opinion because I'm having to find full games on him, which is a pain in the ass.
I can hear.
You can hear. Okay, so Terry though, Tamorian Terry is huge. 6'4", 210. Am I roboting again?
No. Joshua Bigby in the chat says, "Can I quote you on that, Zach?" And that just struck me as funny. but Zac Reed.
That's probably the most intelligent thing I've said all night.
For sure, for me.
So Terry is this rare combination of size and straight line speed.
Okay.
And if he gets a free release off the line, he's going to beat corners over the top because he's got such long strides. And he's talented at the catch point. He secures the ball and keeps it up high out of harm's way. But the biggest surprise to me in Terry's game at 6'4", 210 is he's really good after the catch.
Oh, okay.
Like he's a player. And you're not gonna love this, but it's really N'Keal Harry like after the catch. Like in college, N'Keal Harry was fantastic, like 12 yards down the field where he could catch the ball and then run. Mm-hmm. And Tamorian Terry does that really well. Unfortunately, I think that the flaws are proportional to his size. Like he struggles really, really mightily to get off the line versus press, which is weird because he's really big and you would think that he'd be able to hand fight. But he's got really loud feet and makes a lot of unnecessary steps that don't do anything to get him open and don't deceive the defender. So he's just sitting there like pumping his legs, wasting movement. He also suffers from drops, and I think part of that's it's concentration, but then also technique. He tends to let the ball get in on his body, and that negates his length advantage. You know, if you let the ball get in on you and you're 6'4", like what are you doing? You have almost a 7-foot wingspan. And Terry also gets frustrated easily, and I think it mentally checks out. And he actually mentally checked out on his team, which yeah, that's not a great look. So he's tantalizing, like physically as a prospect, especially on the heels of success of big players like DK Metcalf and T. Higgins. Unfortunately, I don't think that he's got the same level of skill at the release point as either of those. He's big, but he's a downfield threat that I think ultimately struggles to separate. So, I mean, he's in the lower group of players that I've got so far.
So you mean being big doesn't automatically make you better than everyone else in the field? What a weird take, Zach.
Tall ain't all, as they say.
That kind of meshes well what I'm finding. It's a shame, man, because he did a lot from the minute he was on the field, held a large share of the offense. It's just even
more athletic. Jake said Preston Williams field. I think even more athletic than Preston Williams, but yeah for sure. Off-field stuff. And
Preston Williams isn't that athletic, probably.
so Equanimous St. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and there's another one. I think there's Osiris coming. It's just like all the Egyptian gods. And Dad was
awesome. Would that be? There's all three of them. Oh.
Dad was 2-time Mr. Universe, so that family has got like a lot of things going on.
It's the first time I've liked Equanimous St. Brown. Like seriously, that's awesome. Hey, Guy, we haven't mentioned Sage Surratt yet. I don't have much of a thought on him. Last year was his biggest year, leading to misleading college dominator in that the best and the last average is just his last year, and so it looks exponentially higher than it is, which is a big pitfall for me to fall into and a problem with the stat. Played only 4 games at age 20, 11 games at age 22, so it's hard to judge him, apart from those seasons where obviously he played significant games. Yeah, it's not the most positive when you compare it across any of those data points. So he's joining the NFL at age 23, which is going to be a late declare and off most GMs' radars for early draft capital because of that. ACC Atlantic is an okay conference, like we've mentioned before. I don't hate him. I just don't see anything jumping off the page. He was okay in the years where he played a full season. Like, I don't know.
He to me is a player who really wins with savvy and technique more than anything else, which I don't know that that's a ringing endorsement. So like Surratt, he makes the plays that he should, which is which good. But terrible. No, I think that as a quarterback, you like that. You like when you throw the ball to Surratt, you know he's going to catch it. He's pretty good at beating press. He's got a jab step move, although he struggles when he tries to hand fight. So like if a defender can get hands on him, he's in a lot of trouble. Surratt is able to use his speed to beat bigger defenders and physicality to outdo smaller defenders. Right. But his most effective weapon is his ability to process. He reads coverage really well, countering what the defense presents. And several times he shifted his route to a slant and go when the corner that was lined up on him blitzed, because when that happens, it pulls the safety up in coverage. And so a slant and go pulls the safety further, and that double move allows him to get over the top. The problem, though, I think his size and his true lack of speed causes him to struggle with creating separation windows against man. So, you know, Surratt is fine. He's not really a threat after the catch either. He's kind of like a third-tier Mike Evans, you know, where you're not getting anything after the catch, but he's making the plays, you know, where when the ball gets to him, he's going to catch it, but he's not doing anything after.
So basically, if Mike Evans was a burrito from your favorite Mexican restaurant. Yeah, I'm kind of the same place. Look, there's a balance between experience and age, which I'm interested to explore, but I haven't a lot. Anthony Amico actually suggests that experience is better than just looking at age. I haven't found that, but Anthony Amico's really smart, and he's actually a coach for football, so knows more of what Zach knows and knows everything plus that I know. And so I usually pay a lot of close attention when he speaks. So that's where Surratt's falling. Having a good season at age 22 isn't the most, and that being the only season you can really judge him, isn't the most positive indicator. But having a good season, having relatively little experience, is actually good. And so he can't. That's where he falls for me. He's like, yeah, but I don't think he's gonna get a lot of draft capital.
Well, and I don't think that.
But I don't hate him. I don't hate him at all.
I don't think that what he does necessarily translates to points for fantasy. Like that's the you know, but
which is really just volume, which is you know. I know, but if he like actually, this is where Preston Williams comes to mind, like a player who's decent. And we don't know as much about, falls into a good situation where he can fill a role. I think Surratt could be that kind of a player for sure.
Yeah.
Jake, who's now just a part of this. Why don't you just come join in, Jake? Really, at this point? Oh yeah, because you're retired. All right. NFL draft talker. Solid player was probably a pretty low fantasy ceiling. I guess we're all kind of agreeing, but for my part, I just want to add it's because we didn't see a lot of him. But when we did see him, unlike a Terrence Marshall, he was good for the entire time we saw him, not just in because you kind of have to only take that one instance. So yeah, hope he's going round 3. Yeah, he could get 3rd round, which would make him definitely an interesting guy. But I think there's going to be, especially in this player, there's going to be players with more to judge that are more exciting, but I'd keep him on your radar. That's kind of the tier I have him in. It's like, yeah, these are players that did, for one reason or another, aren't sticking out, but did pretty decent. They don't have their names in red. They're not in the yucky never if there was a fire tier. It's fine. Yeah. And he's probably one of the most positive comps. I can move him up a little bit, but the ranks are fictional at this point. It's really the tiers I'm paying attention to. Yeah, so is that your sleeper?
What? Surratt's
your sleeper?
No,
right?
No.
No. Do you have one? Someone that
I
we
don't.
haven't talked about that? Like I mentioned, like 7 guys who I don't think are interesting, but I look for sleepers by who people are fading, and it's basically whoever the NFL is like no, and I'm like yes, that's my sleeper. Last year was Tyler Johnson. Now he's a Super Bowl ring, so that was a big hit. C. Smith's in the same tier for me with Surratt. Like, yeah, it's a good things. I'm not hating on him. But he'd need to get pretty good draft capital to push him over anyone in those earlier tiers. It's kind of the tier he's in.
Right.
Surratt, again, didn't do much, but in that last year, he got 40% dominator, which is kind of somewhat of a threshold for, like, that's an impressive number to hit at any conference, to be that much of your team's offense, even in a senior season. So, yeah, there's a positive note there. I put him in the, if something else ticks for me, then I'll be interested. But he played 4 seasons before that and only really showed up in his last year. He looks like a late breakout, but because it was such a high breakout, I'm not going to tell you he's bad. That's interesting, at least. Eskridge Jake's in my never, not even if there's a fire tier. And I tend to get funky with those kind of notes, and so my notes on him are, nah, bruh. Okay, more breakouts, less sarcasm. Nah, bruh. And it just kind of continues on that way. Come on, people. A 23-year-old breakout got most of the production versus 19-year-olds. Strong pass. Like, no, that looks like a pure late breakout to me. Like, nah.
Yeah.
No, it's just, that's like Surratt. Not Surratt. That's like who was I literally just talking about? C. Smith, but he wasn't like an impressive amount of the offense. It's a late breakout, and he wasn't even that particularly good at late breaking out. Right. So, no. It's just not the type of player I'm ever going to like.
Yeah, I haven't put eyes on Eskridge yet because he wasn't on the radar. He wasn't on the list of like 30 wide receivers that I had to start this process. so I haven't gotten there yet, and maybe I will, but I don't know. I mean, it seems like it was, he practiced really well at the Senior Bowl, which I don't really take into account. Like, no offense, but like one-on-one drills in like a hermetically sealed practice is not like, right. I don't hold much stock in that. I mean, like, I know that when I was like 25, I could go back to the high school and go to basketball practice and do the one-on-one drill where I would say, okay, I'm going to cross you over from your left to your right, and I'm going to go by you and shoot a left-handed layup. And I could do that one-on-one against the high school players who are still playing. But if you put me in a game, that doesn't happen because there are actual other players doing other things. And so, like,
weird the way that works.
Yeah, so I haven't watched Eskridge. I probably will before the draft, maybe after the draft, maybe I know never. I don't know.
I've seen him come up in threads I'm not really following because I'm trying to make up my own mind, but I've seen his name pop up. He actually has a pretty good pre-draft score hit rate, and that's because players with those late breakouts, like there's very, very few of them drafted very early in the draft. So when they're drafted early in the draft, only one of them has to hit, and it increases the hit rate because of that nasty little variance of a low sample. So, like, you could make a Kelvin Benjamin argument. Like, very few players get drafted in the very tippity top of the first round with that kind of profile, right. And the one that did broke out for one season. So that's the argument. And, you know, I can be broad. If he's taken in the first round, again, I'm not going to fade a first-round wide receiver indefinitely. Eventually, I'm just going to admit the NFL probably knows more than I do most of the time. Not really. but I'm going to take that bet, even if it's only because that first-round draft capital carries weight. But I don't see him getting that. Like, I don't. But, you know, that surprised me before. But that's how he could get out of the never if, even if there's a fire tier for me.
I think you're much smarter than the NFL, Peter. Don't sell yourself short there.
I think that most wet dish rags. No, no, definitely not. And definitely not me. I'm yet to find anyone I'm smarter than. I keep trying one day. I will find that.
I feel like that's why you keep bringing me back on. You're just like, I can beat up on that guy. It's like the speed bag. You just and that's it.
No, I just want the engineer in here just to fact check my math. In case I say something completely wrong.
I don't math outside of the hours of 7 to 3:30. Like 7 to 3:30, I'll math, whatever you want. But outside of that, I'm done. I rely on you.
I'm not paying you enough to math. That's fair. I guess since you're here, we'll talk more about why you don't like Kenny Gainwell. No, we did skip over Jamar Jefferson and Javonte Williams. I think Chubba's really interesting because he's gonna fall apparently, and so I'll probably be drafting him a lot. But did I hear wrong that you've got one of them in your top 3 right now?
Yeah, Javonte Williams,
like clearly above Etne, or one of them is
Etienne,
really
yeah. Javonte Williams out of North Carolina. I have him in my top tier of running backs. So, he is incredibly versatile, and he's a big back. I mean, he's got that prototypical. He's about the same size as Najee Harris.
Okay,
and so you're looking. He's 5'10", 220. So he's got that prototypical size. He had 25 catches this past year in 11 games, 1,140 yards, 19 touchdowns. I don't care about the touchdowns, but some people will care about the touchdowns. But I think that Williams runs between the tackles really well. He runs like he is a linebacker, because he was a linebacker in high school.
Fair enough. That makes sense.
Yeah, and he's got really good pad level. He keeps himself low, and that center of balance allows him to run through defenders. And he doesn't necessarily seek out contact. So that was the thing that John Kelly, I love John Kelly, but one of the things he would do is go out of his way to hit somebody.
Yeah, right.
Williams doesn't do that, but he's got the power to keep going through and picking up extra yards. And his acceleration is really interesting. And I said this to Jay, Mike, with my engineering background. I said it's almost impossible to describe his acceleration without a free body diagram.
Okay.
He seems to just keep picking up speed the longer he runs. So he's got quick burst, but continues to gain speed throughout the duration.
So he's a juggernaut, basically. He's a juggernaut. It's not fast, but unstoppable.
That the way he runs like that reminds me of Nick Chubb. It reminds me of Jonathan Taylor, where you have that back who can, once he gets in space, it looks impossible because he's so big, but he continues to run away from defenders. The negatives in his game, I think he sometimes will lack patience, which means that he'll end up running up the back of his blockers instead of letting them, clear out a lane for him to run. And early in his career, he gave up goal line touches. Antonio Williams was at Carolina and took goal line touches. But obviously last year that wasn't an issue. I mean, he had the 19 touchdowns. So I don't think that the 2020 running back class is as good as 2020. I think we've had an extraordinary run for, aside from maybe 2019 for 5 years in a row. This is not part of that run anymore. And I think next year is probably going to be another down. But I do think Javonte Williams has the speed, the size, and the pass catching to be one of the few that could have a 3-down role. I mean, it's you're looking at maybe Ezekiel Elliott upside. If he hits his absolute ceiling, you're going to see a guy who can be running back 5 or 6, in fantasy. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's ever going to be in that same tier as Kamara and McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook, but he could be in that next one.
No, I'm kind of don't disagree with all of that, which is upsetting. There's actually As I run through the players in my ranking list, I've got him noted as the last player that I have noted, and everyone above him is the one with the others. And with a positive comparison score. And a comparison score is something I'm playing with, which is trying to evaluate how they produced their points and if it's similar to those who finished with top 12 seasons at running back. And that's kind of what you're saying, like his skill set overall. And so if you look at the way he produced it, he's also the last player. Like there's only two in here coming out at a quote unquote typical age. He's coming out at 21 years old. So he's got a lack of experience, but good college season, which is lack of experience compared to Etne and Najee Harris, who sucks, by the way. Really, go watch that video. It's fucking hilarious.
I did. No, I did. It was this afternoon. I was sitting there. I was like, Najee Harris sucks. I need to listen to it.
I thought that would bait everyone into it, and it did. It worked. It was amazing. But yeah, he's touched the ball 408 times. Again, back to the average, it's 583. So a little less than most before he declares. And he's one of few players with good profiles. And the last one, the positive comparison in the way he produced those yards to good players. In the 2021 class. And so, yeah, I quite like his profile. He hits that second tier for me because he doesn't quite, as I think you're agreeing with Harris and Edne's overall heights that they hit. But the way he produced it and what he did was interesting. Again, at only 21 years old, he's only got 2,778 total yards or something like that, which is a lot lower than the 6,000 from Etne or the 4,000 from Harris. But again, they've played multiple extra seasons, and again, we counting yards is went out before we even started, to be honest with you. Not many people just counting overall yards. But yeah, I think he produced well. He's coming out at an interesting age in a weaker class. I think he could find a home wherever there's a home to find it, which will make him fantasy relevant. Jefferson I actually have ranked a little higher, which is Jamar Jefferson. Because he got a higher score. It's coming from the Pac-12 North, because apparently we delineate by compass directions now. Let's see, he has a positive comparison score. Yeah, just about. I'd never heard of him, honestly. He's not a name that came up before I started my own process. Let me see. The last player drafted from his conference with any significance was Royce Freeman, which isn't great. But Myles Gaskin was undrafted from that conference. So, they produced some running backs. And before that, it was Christian McCaffrey. So that's cool, I guess. And Jefferson doesn't really compare to McCaffrey in that way.
No.
He's got like 5.8 yards per touch, which is right about on the average line. Not particularly impressive. And a below average use in the receiving game in terms of his overall touches. He's at 7%. The average is about 9%. So it's not ideal, but again, his overall production while coming out at age 21 was a little bit higher than Williams, and so he gets a slightly higher bump, but they're in the same tier. And my preference in that tier is strongly Kenny Gainwell. So, yeah. Any notes on Jefferson?
Yeah. So I think it was interesting him his freshman year, the second game he ever played, he ran for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns, and from there he was the bell cow at Oregon State, for that entire year. He got injured his second year, and then with COVID that kind of messed up this past year, but Jefferson's acceleration. Am I? Look at the clickbait. I like that. Jefferson's acceleration is really fast. Like he gets to and through a hole sometimes before the first level defenders even know he's there. And he's at his best when he can identify an inside running lane, make one cut to get there, and then use his speed. And, Jefferson's fast enough to get to the edge, but he does most of his damage from the inside. And he did have the 25 catches in his first year at Oregon State. And then, again, the next 2 years were partial years. So he's not a traditional space back, but he can catch the ball. So I think that sitting around 30, 35, 40 catches in a season in the NFL is well within the realm for Jefferson. The problem with Jamar Jefferson, though, is when the initial hole doesn't open up quickly, instead of continuing to press the line of scrimmage for another option, he just kind of stops and is like, well, it should have been there. It should be right there. Where, and that lack of improvisation leads to him missing chunk yards that if he just like bounced to the outside or kept running, he could have made a big play, but he loses that because of the hesitation. And he is one who initiates unnecessary contact.
Okay.
Which is not great. Sometimes it leads to fumbles too, because you'll carry the ball out in one arm and then just go in and try to truck somebody. There's a good chance to me that Jefferson gets pushed down rookie draft boards because there are so many good wide receivers and because there are other running backs that people have heard, name recognition. And I think that he will be an interesting name to remember in the second tier, that second round, especially if he ends up in a place where they run a zone scheme and it's a pretty fluid backfield. So, San Francisco is the obvious one. That's where everybody wants to put all running backs. But that type of scheme, if he landed in Atlanta, I would like that too. But he can do everything. He just needs the chance.
Yeah, the only other guy, actually, my interest level pretty much plummets after those guys. But Michael Carter, in a slight tier by himself, in that he's not quite as interesting as the ones we've just mentioned and have mentioned already, but he stands out above the ones below him. And so he's got a little mini tier all to himself. Who's Michael Carter? Honestly, outside of him looking pretty good, like I don't know who he is.
It's so he's in the same backfield as Javonte Williams.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're both at UNC, and they split carries and the receiving work almost right down the middle. Okay. But Carter's is quite a bit smaller, so he's 5'8", like 202. Where Javonte Williams is 5'10", 220. So like Javonte Williams is the hammer. Michael Carter is more of the space back.
Thunder and lightning.
That's but he's a little bowling ball guy too. Like, and I think that pigeonholing him as a pure scat back is going to be a mistake because I think he can carry the ball inside. He's got a combination of real quick burst and he's slippery. He's the type of player who is small enough to get to a hole and he kind of disappears. And then all of a sudden he's out the other side. Kareem Hunt was that same way where like you'd lose him. He doesn't need a very big, he's a crease runner. So he doesn't need a very big hole. And then he's out the other side. And it's like, oh man, what happened? And Carter also is really good at accelerating out of tackles. So a defender, like Carter materializes, a defender goes to get him, and then Carter will accelerate out of that. And so you see a lot of guys try to arm tackle him and fail. And Michael Carter's a really good receiver. He had 25, 21, and 25 in the last 3 seasons catches. So he's that, to me, a profile of what I call a pass catcher plus. So he's a player who is probably going to start out as a pass catcher, but if there's an injury, you can run him like he's the feature back. And I'm more interested in those guys than I am in the guy who is strictly a 2-down back. And, need
the
to have
NFL is at least going to think of him that way.
Yeah. And like I just think that's the type of player. The only issues I think with Carter is his quickness gets him in trouble, and especially between the tackles. So he runs up again. He runs up on his blockers. So it's that same thing you saw with Jefferson. He needs to let the blockers establish a running lane before he turns on the jets. But other than that, like he's really nice. just a little bit small.
Yeah, I mean, James Conner, Giovanni Bernard, and Lamar Miller are the last good players drafted from his conference. So I'll take a Kareem Hunt comparison.
Yeah, he's close to those guys. Like I don't see too much. Like he's in that ilk. He's a pass catcher with a little bit of run.
Neat. I'm done. I think that's everyone. That's not a quarterback.
I have one question for you. Before
I've got a lot more ranked in here, but not this. I don't want to talk about him. What's your question?
Someone said James White, Michael Carter's James. I think Michael Carter actually runs more physically than James White. I think he's a better runner. And James White, the Patriots, the way they use him, they'll run him in situations that are advantageous to him, meaning like it'll be like 3rd and 7 and you're expecting James White to be out on a screen pass and they'll run a draw and he'll run for like 11 and you're like, James White just ran for 11 yards, and it was because of down and distance in that situation. But my question is, I've been hearing a lot of, and I'm trying not to get caught up in it because I don't love this player, but I've been hearing a lot of rumblings for Ramondre Stevenson. And I was wondering if you had anything on him. He's big. He started out at like 240. I think he's down to like 227. He's just an immense piece of humanity.
Yeah. I've got a Marcus Stevenson and also Ramondre Stevenson. Someone else.
That's the one, Ramondre.
Yeah, running back. Just reading from my notes here. Okay, so I have interesting profile, so I'm reaching for the next guy who caught a lot of balls compared to his overall touches. Stevenson had 14% of his touches go in the receiving game, 21% of his yards came from the receiving game. 7.7 yards per touch is actually pretty impressive for a running back, but there's an inclination towards those touch thresholds to be higher if you have a heavy use in the receiving game. So, just keep that in mind. Also probably a reflection of his receiving role. It's also not a bad thing that he has that large receiving role, despite the fact that I just threw shade at his yards per touch. Let me see. He only played 2 years, and he's coming out at a later age. Is my big, what's the NFL going to think?
He went to JUCO. I can't believe you don't have his stats from Cerritos Community College. JUCO, yeah.
It's hard to imagine he's going to make the roster as a lead running back in the NFL. But again, he's another one of those players where if he falls back asswards into a role, I mean, he's got a decent skill set. He was fairly good with it in college. If he can elevate that, which is much more about what you see than what the numbers say at running back. Don't mind him. And you say he's huge. I like huge things.
Yeah. 6 foot 227.
Cool. So I actually have randomly looked at that. I got very few others. I would say Spencer Brown is actually number 1 in my pre-draft model, but that's the same way that, who was it? Malcolm Perry last year was showing up really, really well. Like I don't think we're falling for that one. But yeah, if you ever look, he's coming from the Cursor West. And that pretty much explains it. That and he's had a long career racking up yards at a low conference that typically produces higher yardage counts. That's kind of why Brown stood out a little bit. But my model's stupid, and I'm stupider, but at least I know that. Duh, model. Anyone else?
That was the one question. That's been the name that I've heard on several podcasts and throughout the Twitterverse, because he came in and weighed 227 at the Senior Bowl, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's huge." And he played behind Trey Sermon and somebody else, Kennedy Brooks for Oklahoma. So I just this past year he only played, I think, 6 games because he had a marijuana suspension. And so, you get this really small sample size of him being very good.
I haven't even looked at Trey Sermon yet. He's on my list of players I've got to look at. I haven't finished running back yet, to be fair. I normally just get pretty bored when looking at running backs and quit. was I going to say, the funny thing about team big guy, wide receiver or running back, everyone like talks about it as if it's at a fixed place and time, unless they need to make an argument for a player who's got problems. Like, he can get bigger or it changed. But like a wide receiver, like a counter I'm thinking of rolling out is pointing out that Devontae Adams, while being pretty decent, at least in his second season, compared to average and having a good college profile, something we know about his actual trajectory is he really blew up, not because Aaron Rodgers, although that factors in, I'm sure, but he changed his body significantly. Like what he's listed at, like that's not where he came in. And so if you're looking at players now and comparing them to what they were as rookies, like he lost significant weight in order to get where he is right now to dominate. And so bigger isn't better and heavier isn't better. And most players we think are better because they were heavier and bigger change their bodies in order to get good, kid. Like it's an element of it. And I mean, that's not specifically directed at Stevenson, but we really have, I'm just saying, like even the big guys lose weight and the small guys don't gain weight, and John Brown's still a thing and Philip Lindsay exists. And anyway, just thought I'd throw that out there since we're talking about a big heavy guy. Can you pronounce ETN? One more time before I go to bed.
You got it.
No, I'm just saying the letters. ETN.
Etney.
Yeah, I was told to say Etney instead.
It reminds me. It reminds me of draft day with it and David goddamn Putney and Travis goddamn Etney. We're throwing him in at the end.
Yep. iRugs, appreciate that, man. I'm glad someone's listening to it. I really am. It's just you. J Mike occasionally messages me to let me know he listened to me an episode, and Zach pretends every time we talk like he.
Oh,
it's just iRugs, Zach, and J Mike.
I am hit.
Which is fine. For some reason, I still enjoy it. Go figure.
But.
Yeah, I think you said it right, by the way. What did you say? RB average yards per their particular conference and how a said RB did in that conference. Yeah, I think conference plays a role. I mean, me and you, Zach, were talking about this last year. Like, can't you look at Justin Watson and just the conference? The problem is most conferences operate within a fairly similar range. There's very few outliers but it is interesting to look at running back ones and wide receiver ones, and specifically through points per game and yards per team touch. You do get some significant differences. At least gives you a better window into comparing them to past players, at least. It's been an interesting journey. About saying what conference, but yeah, hopefully the day is in there now. Someone can find something to do with it. And most of my models chose to use at least one of the stats adjusted by conference, which was interesting too. Oh yeah, exactly. It's you and my mates. That's it. Let's listen. I will try and build it in, man. Yeah, dude, I'm exhausted. You exhaust me, Zac Reid. I'm guessing that's your real name. I don't know.
No, it's just Zachary. Zach.
Oh, right. Cool. No, I'm honestly exhausted. We ran through so many rookies right there.
That's what we do.
Get tired talking.
That's what we do.
Yeah. That's why again. Why do we? If someone could let me know, that'd be great. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed it as always. I hope we touched on some of the players you wanted to hear about. If you're here to hear about players, if not, I hope we made enough jokes. I guess I don't know. Don't know. Anything you want to share with people? Podcasts you got coming out? Article you're writing? Dynasty Dummies website up and running? That kind of a thing.
Mostly none of that. I'm doing the rookie kind of film note profiles with J Mike over on the DFPN at work, and I think we're doing another one Thursday. I don't want to commit because it's J Mike's schedule where and I don't want to speak for him, but I think Thursday we're rolling out another series of running backs, and then we'll do a couple of wide receivers some quarterbacks and tight ends. Nobody cares about those, and then whatever we missed. But that's pretty much what I'm doing. It's all rookies all the time. We're on to the 2021 draft.
Oh wow! Is J Mike going to be a fixture for a while now in the Dynasty Dummies? Is Kyle LeBrecq ever coming back? It's like this constant question hanging over my head.
So
I think about it every day, Kyle.
I'm not sure about the first part. I don't know if J Mike is that is kind of in utero. It's in the process. We're trying to grow that. We're trying to get permission from his better half to make that happen.
Of course, I assume he's not leaving anywhere else, but I just meant because I really enjoy listening to J Mike, whatever podcast he's on. I always listen to the Dynasty Dummies, so like it'd be great to hear more of him.
I mean, I always say that I would listen to J Mike read a phone book. And listening to me talk is about as boring as reading a phone book. And so it's a perfect match.
Works out in the middle there.
And as for Kyle, I think he jaked me. I think he's pretty close to having, although I don't know that that's public knowledge. Nobody is watching this at this point, right? We're good.
Don't worry about
it. But yeah, I think life kind of happened. He had a son and then a daughter, and then we had a pandemic, and it just everything all at once. And
it's not. I mean, I make fun of it, and I don't know why we're doing it, but it's not easy, especially to fit a life around.
No,
I mean, I talk constantly, and we just did one episode on a few rookies that everyone's going to want to hear more about, and I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
So
it's not... and like so I've put in, so everybody that we've talked about tonight, I've watched at least 8 games,
right?
Probably closer to 12. A lot of these were full games because you couldn't get the cut-ups, or some of the guys doing the cut-ups don't cut the way I would like, and so I have to go and watch the full game and use my fast forward button, because I like to see the whole play, and I like to see what guys do when the ball doesn't go to them, and like all of this. So I'm a little finicky that way. So like there's a lot. Plus I've written, I don't know, 12,000 words about these players already, on top of watching the film and doing the charting and everything. So like I feel bad. Like, my wife just kind of sits there and she's like, I'll see you in April. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Like,
and then the season gets here and you're like, see you after Christmas.
Well, so that's like, well,
hey, honey, you got a job, right? You still got a job.
the really nice thing about doing what I have traditionally done with the dummies is in season doesn't really matter. Like we're not giving you the week to week, like who to play and that sort of thing. We're more focused on kind of the strategy and the mental aspect of the game and being able to win in those margins, because so many people give so much better information week to week that we can't compete with that. We can't. Like, if you're going to listen to a recap show, you're not going to listen to us. Yeah. You're going to listen to like Sigmund Bloom and Waldman. And
J Mike does a pretty good job of the Dynasty, Dummy Blitz. Yeah, I enjoyed that one. But I'm not doing a waiver wire show.
Right.
Screw you.
And so like so in season for me is really the off season. Like I do most of my work from November, December to like July, June, where we're doing that sort of thing, and then we'll do some kind of evergreen stuff before the season, and then most of the season is focused on the psychological aspect, the strategy and the playing, because I think that's so underlooked. Playing against the players in your league. Not just the X's and O's, not just the lineup strategies and that adding players and like that's nice, but you can make up a lot of ground understanding your league mates and understanding how the community thinks. And that little, I always send the GIF out of Hook, the movie with Robin Williams, where the Lost Boys are debating between Rufio and Peter, and they're going, over to one and then back over to the other and then back, because we do that as a community. And if you catch us doing that, you can make, a profit on both ends. And so if you're paying attention and you understand how this works, but so that's where I am. The in season is really the off season for me, and the off season is where I actually work.
No, I appreciate it, because I don't want to do this by myself. It's already hard enough without, having to not have someone to talk to about it. So I really appreciate it. Also, I don't want to do all the work, so I'm glad you're doing that work.
I feel like I lean. I mean, you know this. I lean so heavily on your analytic evaluation, as part of my process, because I don't have that. Like, that is a flaw in my evaluation, and so it's nice to be able to, put that whole story together.
I'd actually agree with Rugs here in that I actually enjoy the off season more.
Oh, yeah.
The in season grind, like, I would love to take it off. Unfortunately, I do projections, so it's that is just a grind because I give a fuck. But and I work hard. Don't get me wrong, but it's work. But I love the inside. The thing I try and remember, especially when it gets tough, like right now I'm exhausted, but we're doing all this background for the fun. The fun is arguing with someone. And that's the stuff people actually enjoy as content. You're arguing with someone back and forth, but you have to have, especially if you don't want to be an insincere actor or whatnot, if you actually want to, have a perspective, you have to do all your background shit. And so that you can actually have an opinion. I mean, plenty of people have an opinion without doing it.
Yeah, but how do you
believe me? But I don't find that fun. I want.
How do you defend?
I want to have an opinion.
Yeah, how do you defend an opinion if you don't know how you got there?
Yeah, and it's not like I enjoy the off season. I enjoy this process, but I want to go on the open bar, and when we're arguing and making fun of each other, I want to just enjoy it. I don't want to have to be looking shit up or making shit up on the fly. I want to have an opinion. And fortunately for us, a few people find that entertaining, and I do think they find that part entertaining, much more than the grind. But the grind's got to be done in order to make it happen. And I guess this is a long-winded way of saying, if you've got a favorite follow or favorite content creator, believe it or not, drop a like on their video, go subscribe to the Dynasty Dummies. Like, that's what we get out of it, and we really appreciate it. And it seems stupid, but it honestly helps motivate you through, because it's rough, man. Like, you don't want to do it by yourself. We just need to know you're out there doing it with us. That's it. So Stephanie Smalls out there growing, J Mike Check that we just mentioned, who's on the Dynasty Dummies a lot. I mean, too many good people are aging out and thinking, you know what, for free, I got a kid. And that's actually, and by all means, go check him out. And definitely check out the Dynasty Dummies, which you definitely have and should already if you're watching on a live stream with me, but still. And I appreciate you guys, really do. It's fun not to be interested in this by myself. And you too, Zach, man. Really,
thanks for having me on. This was great.
Like, I wouldn't have friends if it wasn't for you. So I appreciate it. Yeah, man. Any parting words?
No, this was an absolute blast, and I can't wait to go at you again a little later on in the process.
Well, I appreciate it, man. And thanks again for coming on. I guess this is a different thing, but not really. And I really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for checking us out for any length of time that you did. Take care, stay safe, and we're getting out of here. So bye. I guess I have no good ending. It's just kind of like,
I always sit back and just go, peace.
Yes, that works, but I gotta push a button, so I have to be like here, and you gotta. Anyway, see ya.